Well, the Stellar Blade demo is finally here. It landed on purpose this time instead of by accident like the first time, if you were one of the lucky ones that got in before they shut the whole thing down. And I was able to play it. I got it to complete it. That stream is on this channel if you want to see that. I also beat the boss challenge. I have that time stamped when I actually beat him on my 5th try. And I have to say, this demo completely changed my mind about Stellar Blade. Now, it's not what I was expecting, okay? I did not expect it to be as challenging or as punishing as it ended up turning out as well. I did have to do some adjusting. I've been playing a lot of Rise of the Ronin, so my muscle memory was all wrong. But once I learned some of the timing, I have to say, I am way more excited for this game than I was before. I knew that, like, the boss fights and the action looked good from the trailers, but there's just so much more to why the combat feels good, and I want to talk about that because I think that's really important in a game where you are going to have challenging fights. Now, some are saying that the game looks a little bit rigid or clunky, and I definitely sense that. I know why they're saying that. There is something to the movement and the camera that I'll speak to. I also want to speak to the perfect parry and the perfect dodge. Some people are getting frustrated with the timing. I've looked into it. I did my own practicing, like during my gameplay session, and I learned some things. So I'll speak to that also. Now, I put all the good information right here at the beginning of the video in the form of sort of an opening monologue. And the reason that I do that is because it's a longer video. If you want to be here for the live streams and the discussion, make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell button. That way you don't miss out on the live shows. And if you want to get into the extra content, we're even going to start doing maybe like more reaction style content for the members, pick that $6 member tier and join for more content. Well, after a little over an hour with the Stellar Blade demo, I have to say I am convinced that this game is far better than I expected. It has really changed my mind, but it is also quite a bit more challenging than I expected. While the trailers certainly showed big boss fights, high action combat, sort of intense fluidity, I was not expecting this to be as punishing as it turned out to be, but I think that's a good thing. You can actually turn the difficulty down if you're not in the mood for something that's going to be a little bit more challenging. But I certainly wouldn't classify this as like a Souls-like, but they have zero problem just smacking you around in this game and then making you sort of rerun a section. Now, some of that could have been I was adjusting from playing Rise of the Ronin, and I was making some mistakes because you have to kind of readjust to which buttons you need to push and when. But others left comments saying they were having some issues with perfect block as well as the perfect dodge, like the windows. I'm going to speak to that. I did some testing. I've looked into it. There are some things that you need to know before you write this game off and you say, I couldn't get the perfect dodge to work, okay? By the end of my time with the demo, when I did the boss challenge, I can say that the game just sort of clicked for me, and my excitement for the game has increased quite a bit. So I want to walk through the good, the bad, and why this game convinced me, why it did change my mind. Now, if you like this kind of content, my live shows, remember to hit that like button and the subscribe button, all of those things. So up first, the good. The graphics and the performance really, I think, is important in a game like this. And I ran this in performance mode. I never saw a single hitch. I never saw a single stutter. I never saw a single frame drop. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't happen. I mean, they could have happened. I don't know. If they did, they were so minor that they went unnoticed. And believe me, I notice when frames fluctuate. As a streamer, I'm always analyzing, is my capture card getting a good capture? I notice it very quickly. Like with Rise of the Ronin, the guy that I do a show with on Mondays, Kirk from What's New Video Games, he's like, I'm not really noticing it. I'm like, dude, I'm noticing it all the time. I think I'm very sensitive to frame drops and frame stutters just from years of streaming and sort of analyzing capture card footage. And that, I think, is why I can say I didn't notice it. I didn't see it happening in this. Now, to be fair, the game does set up pretty linear and contained areas, which is totally fine. I think it works well for a game like this, but I think that is helping them maintain good frame rate. Now, maybe later there'll be big open areas. Maybe later there'll be issues with that, but in the demo, I saw absolutely no issues at all, especially considering how good the game looks, okay? Yes, I'm well aware that the main character is attractive. We've all gotten the pictures and the memes and the videos in our feeds on Twitter. But just setting that aside, okay? She wears armor that's got a shine to it. There's texture, there's lighting. The overall feel of the game is graphically quite good. My favorite part is probably the enemy design, which I think can make it tough to read sort of like enemy attack telegraphs, like that thing when an enemy is winding up and then you know when to time your dodge or your parry. I think some of that is why people are struggling with perfect dodge and perfect parry, because the enemies look kind of weird, and it's not like you're just watching someone swing a sword or swing a spear or an axe. I ended up liking that, though. Initially, it was like, oh man, I'm having a hard time deducing what's the timing of this telegraph, but it keeps you on your toes, right? You're always encountering some new enemy that looks different, and, you know, you're not quite sure what they're doing. Coming from a game like Rise of the Ronin, where you're typically just looking for like a sword or a spear swing, this game certainly keeps you on your toes in a different way. Ronin's got some tough fights, right? Some tough mini-bosses and bosses. This game uses different methods of making you sort of feel like, wow, this is probably going to be a tough fight or a tough area. And yes, it is just an hour-long demo, but for now, I can say graphics and performance are right on par with what I expect from a next-gen game on the PlayStation 5. Another game, I think this game is another game putting to bed the notion that you can't have a great-looking game that also has solid performance, okay? We keep hearing that, like, well, these consoles aren't strong enough. Well, this is another game showing that that's just such a bogus claim, and I'm glad that it's not just fantastic-looking graphically, but it's also performing very well. Now, the next thing I want to give heaps of praise to is the combat. I am going to give you a word of caution, okay? If the movement or the spacing or sort of the windows for perfect parry and perfect dodge, if they feel a bit wonky, if they feel inconsistent, don't worry. I'm seeing a lot of folks saying that in my comment section. And I told them, I said, keep watching. We learn some things, okay? After some experimentation in the training section with the perfect dodge, I discovered you can actually spend 2 of your skill points to make perfect dodging easier. And just this morning I went and checked. You can do the exact same thing for perfect parrying. Now, I felt parrying was a little bit easier than dodging. I'm not quite sure why that was. But the boss challenge, I really started to notice I was getting those perfect dodges. I knew right when to time them, but you can always go in and spend those points, make the dodge easier, make the parry easier. It reminded me of Thymesia. If you haven't played Thymesia, really cool Souls-like game. It had a very narrow parry window, and it almost made parrying feel not worth it. The high risk was not equal to the potential reward, but you could spend a skill point in Thymesia, and it completely transformed parrying. It felt better. It felt like I could actually use it. There was a boss where I just took him to task with parries. I was like, I think this is more of a parry boss than a dodge boss. So in Thymesia, they did the same thing. I think this game is going to be very similar. Now, some might disagree and say, well, your dodges and your parries, they should just feel good out of the box, right? I've kind of said that before, but since it is something that you invest in and something that makes your character feel stronger the more you play, I kind of like that. I think that's like a cool way of making your player feel like you're progressing, especially once I unlocked Blink. They make you unlock Blink. Like, I wanted to make the perfect dodge easier, but they made me spend, once I had enough skill points, they're like, no, unlock Blink. It does this little blue flash on your sword, and that's your sort of clue that it's time to do it. Like, an enemy will do a big blue flash, and they wind up, and you have to have the discipline and control just to wait for that sword to do the flash. And the first time I did it, it felt amazing. I do it a bunch in the boss challenge if you go check out that footage. Now, this boss, he beats a tar out of me. I've been playing the game for 10 minutes, and I've still got a lot of bad Rise of the Ronin muscle memory, so he beats the snot out of me, okay? The boss challenge, I looked a little bit more impressive in the boss challenge, okay? It does, I think, though, give you this sense of the actual game is telling you what to do and when to do. I always knew when I misfired, and this touches on something that I really want to praise about the combat. The player feedback, it's layered, it's clear, it's fantastic. I always knew what I did wrong. Whenever I failed the boss fight of the demo or the boss fight of the boss challenge, I knew what I had done wrong. I misread something, I mistimed something, I was doing that thing where I was like, oh, that was such a big opportunity and I messed that up. That, I think, is so clear and so important for combat to feel good. You want to be able to analyze your gameplay and say, oh, I missed that, I could have done better. This is why some folks, I think, are getting irritated with the perfect dodge. When they introduce perfect dodge to you, the enemy that you can sort of practice on, like, you get it and you go around the corner and there's like this basic ad to practice on. I thought I was doing something wrong. I was like, did I misunderstand how this works? So I'm trying it. I'm like, do I have to hold back? Do I have to hold forward? What am I doing wrong here? My advice would be to focus more on parrying, right? Parry and spend points to make perfect dodge easier and get blink, and then you'll really start to see that this game actually is very well built. You're not doing anything wrong. They just, in the earliest stages of the game, they give you very, very tight windows, and I think that's on purpose. They want you to feel that sense of investment once you sort of start getting more skills and you can invest more in your character. And then the better you get with perfect parrying and these perfect dodges, you're getting those really awesome beta skills that you can use if you've seen people like shooting a gun or doing a big sword swing. So you feel rewarded for landing lots of perfect parries and lots of perfect dodges. Also, you can knock the enemy off balance by getting a perfect parry, or if you get enough in a row. It depends on the enemy. Sometimes it only takes one, sometimes it takes a couple, and they become groggy, and then you get to do retribution on them for massive damage. All of it felt very fluid, it felt impactful, while also weaving in moments that felt very cinematic, which leads me to the boss challenge. I've mentioned a handful of times, do not skip this, because the demo felt great. And the final boss fight of the demo, I thought, was really enjoyable. But the boss challenge does this sort of classic, hey, we're going to turn the volume up to 11 and we hope you can handle it, right? After 4 tries of the boss fight, something just sort of clicked for me. My 5th attempt was a blast. I was nailing the timing. I was nailing the parries. Somebody watched like a 40-second clip that I put on Twitter, and they're like, well, that seemed kind of easy. And it's like, well, it was only the very, very end of the fight, and it was like my 5th try, so I'd kind of figured some of the timing out. One of the reasons I was able to enjoy the boss challenge was because of something I already said. I knew what I was doing wrong. I knew what I needed to change. The only thing I wasn't clear on in the boss challenge was the purple flash attack. I just tried to sort of dodge at the last second. That seemed to work. Everything else felt fantastic. I just really want to reiterate this. The player feedback and the enemy telegraphs in this game are really good. Even if sometimes those basic enemies, they might take you to task, okay? They're a little bit harder to read maybe than a big, huge boss, but the boss fights, I think, are really where the combat shines. Now, in the realm of music and sound design, the voices, I don't really have any complaints. I enjoyed the game with the Korean voice language and the English subtitles. I always like playing games in their native language, whether it was Tsushima in Japanese or this game in Korean. I have friends that are Korean, so I was picking up on words and phrases that I'm familiar with, and I just think it makes the game feel more authentic. Play how you'd like, but I always do like having the native language of the game, the developers, or what they sort of envision the game looking and sounding like. Now, the music, it seemed fitting for the genre. It's not really my first choice. I saw some people sort of criticizing the music. I enjoyed it. I thought it did its job. It set the stage for the fights and the environment. So that's all of the good. I don't really have any major complaints, but I do want to talk about the bad, because there are some things I think worth talking about. I will say that the camera is not the best, especially when you're surrounded by or you're sort of facing multiple enemies. When a game puts you on a more linear path, I usually find that the camera is a bit tight. It's almost restrictive, and this doesn't really pair well with the targeting system in the game. There were a handful of times where I would kill an enemy, and instead of just targeting the very next enemy that was right there, it just sort of wouldn't do it, and then I would try to target one, or I would try to switch, and it felt like the game was sort of getting confused on who I wanted to target. Now, it wasn't a major issue, but when the combat is already sort of in a challenging lane, this is not a button masher. This is not just some action-adventure game where you're going to mash your way through it. Now, you can put it on story difficulty if you want to do that. I don't know exactly how easy it gets when you do that, when you take it all the way down to the story difficulty. But I don't ever want to feel like I'm fighting with the game mechanics while I'm also fighting with the enemies. That was one thing that I felt like the camera and the targeting could use a little bit of polish. I will also say that the parry and the dodge window, they can feel inconsistent. That could have been my capture card. Sometimes I get latency with that, and I remember having that experience in Sekiro, and then I'd play Sekiro in my living room, and I felt like I'm not having any issues. So sometimes capture cards can cause that. I will say that once I got to the boss challenge, I never really had moments where I felt like it wasn't working consistently, so it could have been a combination of things. I was more in a flow state with the game by the time I got to the boss challenge. I had more skills and abilities for the boss challenge. So if those two things work in tandem, where your player skills improving, but so are your abilities and your skill tree, it should be a very rewarding experience. As long as players don't get too annoyed with the early encounters, if they feel like the dodge and the parry's not consistently working properly. Because again, when I practiced it on that very first enemy, I was like, I genuinely thought I was doing something wrong. And I think a lot of players might feel the same. Hopefully they can, push through and still enjoy it. And maybe, as I said, spend that skill point to make the dodging easier. So lastly, why did this game convince me? Why did it change my mind? Well, first, I have to say, I expected a very different game, okay? The trailers can certainly put an impression in your mind of, like, what a game is going to be, right? I was expecting more of, like, a JRPG-style game with respect to action and combat. But I thought it was going to be a little bit more button mashy, a little less challenging. I didn't expect to be dying as often as I was. And I think that's why I think the demo really convinced me. One of the reasons I'm loving Rise of the Ronin, while maintaining, I still think Rise of the Ronin's performance, needs to be better. They need to be doing some improvements there, especially when you're in the open world, because the graphics are not that impressive in Rise of the Ronin. But the reason I'm really liking it is because the combat feels like a blend of Sekiro and Ghost of Tsushima. The middle ground where that game is, I think landing is wonderful. And this game is landing in a middle ground where it is action-oriented, but it has really satisfying moment-to-moment combat where you've really got to be on your toes and nail those good blocks and parries. It also, I think, has great opportunities for skill expression. You're going to master these things, weave them together, and I've already seen footage on Twitter where I thought my boss challenge felt great. I'm watching people play this game, and they're really, really taking it up to higher levels of skill expression. I think Stellar Blade lands in that very similar middle ground of not necessarily being a Souls-like, okay? It's not just this simple action game where you can button mash, but it's also not overly punishing like Souls-likes can sometimes be. It's somewhere in the middle, which I think is hitting a perfect note with me. I don't always want to play a super punishing Souls game, but I also like when my action games have meaningful combat. I want tight combat. I want to feel like I did something really, really good. I don't want to feel like I just flew through it, with very little challenge. So with my preferences, Ronin and Stellar Blade are keeping me very, very happy as a gamer. I would actually see Stellar Blade, I think, getting quite a few nominations at the Game Awards this year. I could even see it getting a Game of the Year nomination. Art direction and action, I think it certainly will get nominations in some of those categories, which is why I see this as a huge win for PlayStation. This game is a perfect fit for their brand. You certainly couldn't accuse this of being just another movie game. That criticism is bankrupt anyway. It's usually parroted by brand loyalists who have never even played the PlayStation games that they criticize. But this game will make it very difficult to make that claim of, oh, it's just a movie game, given the depth, the complexity, and the fluidity of the combat. Anyone who tries to mindlessly button mash their way through Stellar Blade will end up flat on their back. That is, of course, unless they play it on the story mode. If that's what you're wanting to do, I think you could still enjoy the game. But if you read the player feedback, if you read the enemy telegraphs, if you analyze how to improve, I think you're going to have a great time with Stellar Blade. But that's just what I think. What do you think? So let me give you my thoughts and my conclusions here as this is how I transition to talking to the live audience, just like some final things I want to say. One of my favorite things about this year is the games that keep taking me by surprise. I thought Helldivers 2 looked fun, a knock-around game with the boys. I didn't expect to put 75 hours into it and cover it in an ongoing way. I just didn't expect that from Helldivers 2. Then, Rise of the Ronin. It looked a little rough, and I'm still not pleased with the performance graphically of the game, but I put over 20 hours into Rise of the Ronin, and I'm still excited every night to jump back in. I'm still working my way through that game, and I'm having a great time. And now Stellar Blade. I've seen the commentary and the memes on her looks, okay? I get it. She's attractive. It's been well established, okay? I don't have a problem with putting super attractive people into video games. It just isn't something that I focus on, right? That's not motivating my purchase to play this. I don't go buy every game that puts a pretty girl on the cover or a pretty girl as the main character. But the recent trailers really had me intrigued about the boss battles. I thought, okay, everybody's focusing on how attractive she is, but the combat looks fantastic. That actually looks like a game I might like. The demo did really change my mind because I thought this was going to be like a fun action-adventure game. I would try it out. I would enjoy it. I would probably end up putting it down. But this demo really reminds me of what the Final Fantasy XVI demo did to me. It really sold me on the combat in a game that I really wasn't anticipating loving. Like, I thought, oh, I'll like Stellar Blade. I didn't anticipate liking it as much as I did. As I said, I'm really enjoying a year of surprises. Secondly, I certainly feel what many are observing from watching gameplay or from even playing the demo themselves. The stiffness or the awkwardness, I think it fades pretty quickly once you and the game sort of click. It's just that there's a moment where it clicks. I think the boss challenge was very important to include in the demo. Hopefully most people end up playing that boss challenge because that is really where I felt like things turned for me and I thought, okay, this is way better. I was already having a blast. The actual demo and the final fight in the demo I thought were great, but the boss challenge really took things into a bigger category for me. I will say some gamers might get annoyed with the enemy variance, which makes some of the telegraphs really tough to deduce, but like any game, after a few fights, I knew how to handle the basic enemies. They were previously a nuisance, and now all of a sudden I'm better at beating them. I think that's a great feeling. You're like, oh, I know how to handle this guy. This guy was smacking me around 5 minutes ago, and now I'm smacking him around. I think that's good. That gives you, even in a microcosmic way, in just a demo, it gave me a sense of progression and growing as a player in the game. Now, my conclusion is this, and some people might not like that I'm going to talk about this, but I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to be totally honest. I wish the main character's appearance was not so much of the focus of this game. And not because I'm going to get all Puritan on you. I don't care about that, okay? It's a fantastic game regardless of what she looks like. And yes, I did see the IGN review that said the creator of this game has apparently never seen a real woman, which that's insulting on two levels. First, it's a gross thing to do to presume someone's life experience is like, what, I guess you've seen more women than him? Congratulations. What are we, in high school? Are you also going to brag about not being a virgin next? Secondly, the character model is designed after a real person, okay? Like, it's designed after a real woman. So to be like, this person's never seen a real woman. This is a real person. Real people can look like this, okay? I know it's upsetting to some people, but hey, there are guys that are way more attractive than me. That's just the way that it goes, okay? I just hope that the amazing combat and the performance is what this game gets attention for, because I believe that deserves tons of attention and praise. I would also like folks to know that some of us are playing the game because it's good, okay? I'm not playing this game because I want to spend an extra amount of time climbing a ladder or using the skimpiest outfit I can find. You do you, boo-boo. I don't care if that's how you want to play the game. That's totally fine. If you want to put her in the skin suit and you want to spend a little extra few minutes climbing up and down a ladder, go ahead. But that's not why I am playing, okay? I hope that is reflected in the reviews, in the critical reception, even the likely, I think, Game Award nominations, because it's a great game. It is. I think they've done a great job, and I think people are really going to enjoy it. But those are just my thoughts. Now it's time to hear your thoughts. So, good morning and good afternoon and good evening, and welcome guys in. Make sure you're going through that daily ritual. Smash that like button. Already a bunch of you here. Let's set our sights on 200 likes. You guys have already given us over 100 likes. You guys are the absolute best. So please do that. And we've got a great goal for you this week, okay? We've got goals all throughout the month for the memberships, all right? 2,300 members this week, and I have to play a really bad game on Friday night. We might be looking at Kong, or if you guys have other really great bad game suggestions. And then for the second week, we'll have a slightly higher goal, and we can pick a rage game. You guys can pick a game that'll make me rage out, okay? And then further on in the month, I'll have more goals for you and more incentives, but I'm just going to tell you those for right now, all right? So focus on that. We got a great month ahead of us in April. We've got great games to play and try out, and we've got a great demo to talk about today. Feel free to weigh in on anything I said. There were people that were talking about the perfect dodge and the perfect parries and things like that. I'm curious what y'all's experience has been with that. And Marcus, Han shot first, and so did you. first gifted member of the day. He says, come on, boys, we can get there. And currently we have a little over 2,000 members, okay? So we're holding that 2,000 line. Help us push beyond that. And if we hit 2,300 this week, I got to play a rage game on Friday night. Madam will be here with me. And a 2-spot from Sneaky Wolf. How are the haptics? You know, they were fine. I don't think I noticed them in any particular way. I think the game just felt good. Maybe there were, I don't know if there was a specific thing they were doing with the haptics. So, yo, what's good, Kirk? I don't look at a real woman. I just defend democracy. That's right. That's right. We need more tacky. Yeah. She died too early. I actually thought she was prettier. I was like, hey, can I play as her? You know, she looked awesome. But yeah, they wiped a bunch of them out right there in the beginning. They would have been neat if you could have chosen between, you know, different characters, because they had so many that, you know, crash landed in the opening sequence. Did you look at the gear mods and the stuff during the boss rush? So I booted up the boss challenge this morning just to kind of poke around, because they give you like 4 outfits to choose from. I never mess with any of that. I just, you know, I beat the boss on that 5th try, and then over the weekend I just had way too much going on. I was playing Rise of the Ronin because I'm still trying. I want to complete that game, that I just did not have the time to go in and say, oh, I want to experiment with all the different outfits and all the different equipment. Now, I've seen people say that. Like you said, there was a gun in the boss challenge, and so I didn't get a chance to go check that out. So I'm really excited. I kind of want to just have the memory that I have right now and just keep playing Ronin, get Ronin beat, and then when this game comes out, like, this will be the game that I play all the way to completion next. Like, I don't want to know anything else. I'm kind of that way with certain things now. Like, if it's a movie or a TV show that I know I'm going to want to watch, I basically ignore the trailers after a certain point. Like, I'm like, nope, I know I want to see it. I don't want to see anything more. So I don't want to go in and mess around with it anymore, because it'll just make me want to play it instead of other games. So I want to finish Ronin. I don't want to feel torn or being like, man, I can't get the Stellar Blade game right now. I want to wait, if that makes sense. You must suck at Rise. You're stuck on the Blade Twin fight. The Blade Twin fight was tough. I beat it first try, and I probably did not beat it in a very good way. I kind of brute forced it because I had a lot of heals, and basically what you want to do in the Blade Twin fight is try to time those player switches as best you can. You may have covered this, but was it near Final Fantasy 16 or was it more Souls Ronin? I'm not as familiar with Nier. I played it a long time ago, and it just didn't click with me. It didn't. But Final Fantasy 16 did click for me. I don't think this feels like Final Fantasy 16 that much. There's minor similarities. Like, the perfect parrying made me sort of, it sort of reminisced of the perfect blocking in Lies of P or the parrying in Sekiro. So I did really like that. I liked that it was really rewarding. But then it really kind of reminded me of Ronin, how when you're playing really well, you can suddenly, like in Ronin, when you get a couple of really good deflects, you have this great opportunity to use your martial abilities, you know, like your big swings, your big jumps or whatever. And in this game, it's kind of similar. It's different. It's different because you're charging up your beta abilities with those perfect parries, perfect dodges, and then you get to use them. So that flow felt similar to Ronin, and I kept hitting the wrong button because in Ronin, you're like using the left bumper to block and to parry, and then you use the right bumper to use your martial abilities. Well, in this game, after you're done blocking or parrying with left bumper, you hold in left bumper to use your beta abilities. So that was really messing me up. I kept doing the wrong thing, so I had to really adjust. Once I adjusted and remembered, okay, my abilities are on L1, they're not on R1, I was fine. I thought it felt really, really good. There's dynamic momentum throughout fights. Yeah, and I think that might be why some people playing this or watching this feel like there's a rigidity to it or like a stiffness. were there difficulty options? There's just story and normal, or story and challenging, whatever the two were. So there were just two that I saw. I mean, maybe I misread, but I'm pretty sure it was just the two. It was just like story and normal, and I just left it on normal. I haven't played yet, but my friend said it felt like the first Bayonetta to him with a tougher block parry. I've seen people referencing Bayonetta. I've seen people referencing Nier. Those are genres that just I never got into, because like I spent so much time in Call of Duty as a gamer, and then I spent so much time in Destiny. There are whole genres of games that, you know, I just kind of missed out on. And then I'll play a game like this, and I'll start praising something. I'm like, oh, this is cool, or this is cool. And people are like, yeah, I mean, that was in such and such game. Like, that's happening with Rise of the Ronin. I'll start praising something in Rise of the Ronin, and people start referencing other Team Ninja games that I never played. And I'm like, hey, man, I get it. You know, you've played every game under the sun. Good for you. Hopefully that is added to your experience as a gamer and not taken away from it. Sometimes I feel like the people that play literally every single game that has ever existed, at least it seems like that sometimes, it's almost like every game that comes out is harder for them to enjoy, because they're like, we're not getting anything new. I mean, I saw people saying that about this game. They're like, it doesn't look new. It looks like a game I played before. And I was like, okay, I guess don't play it then. I mean, I'm having a good time. A comparison people forget that I think is more apt is God of War Ragnarok's combat, where it's not quite a Souls, but not just hack and slash, you know, circles to parry, dodge, etc., just more flashy. Yeah, I don't necessarily know if I would compare this to Ragnarok. I think on paper I would agree with what you just said, that it is it's a challenging game. That if you try to button mash God of War Ragnarok or 2018, or you try to button mash through Stellar Blade, you're gonna get your face rocked. It just isn't gonna work. And I think sometimes a game's appearance can really trick people. Like, I think people might look at God of War Ragnarok and think, oh, it's just an action adventure game where you kind of run around as a god. And in this game, you might think the same thing. You're like, oh, it's just a, kind of JRPG style action adventure game. It's like, no, it's actually pretty tough. That kind of is what surprised me the most, is right there in the beginning, they have no problem. Right off jump, the first couple of enemies you fight, they have no problem kicking the tar out of you. It really puts you back on your heels. Like, when I jumped into Lies of P, I knew what I was signing up for. I know I'm going to die and have to rerun areas. Like, you just kind of know. I didn't expect that from this game, and it certainly does. It certainly is like right away, they're just smacking you around if you're not timing stuff right. You love the soundtrack to this game? Yeah, I saw some people complaining about the soundtrack, but I thought the soundtrack was like right within, the genre of what I would expect. When you play games like, Final Fantasy 16 and others, there is a certain style of music that I just have kind of come to expect, and I think this game does a great job. It's not my first choice. I wouldn't, pick that to listen to in the background of my day. Or something. Like, I like the Ori and the Will of the Wisps soundtrack. Like, I introduced that to my kids, and like my daughter likes to listen to it on her iPad, if she's like reading or something. So, some soundtracks are going to hit harder than others depending on your your affinities for different types of music. I thought the music was fine. I didn't think it was bad. It just was like kind of what I expect in a game like this. Yo, what's good, Feed? I see you in the chat. God of War has abilities and also combos, and you have circle indicators for parry, avoid, dodge, etc. Cinematic moments in between combat where you do stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. Shelly. I think on paper, there are definitely some similarities here. The one thing about this that I really like is that it has that tough, meaningful combat, but as P. Dudley's saying, like, you're not dropping stuff when you die. Yo, Patrick Q gifts a member. Keep it going, boys. 25 members and I give 5. Thank you so much for doing that. Every 25. And you guys need about 300 this week. If we hit 2,300, that's the goal for this week. We're going to do more incremental goals this month and see if that doesn't help. And we will do a bad game Friday night where I have to play a bad game. And Cyber Demon comes in and also gives a member. Thank you so much. And takes us to 3 members. The single gifted trains have been happening quite often. Thank you very much, boys. Thank you very much, bro. let's be honest, pretty much all games nowadays are amalgamations of previous games. I mean, I'm not going to agree or disagree with that. I just think it's almost impossible. You could strip every game down and be like, yeah, it's just, you know, it's just another platformer. You know, I remember people, you know, were doing that with Ori. Ori 1, people were saying, like, wasn't that good. It was just a basic platformer. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? Then there were people that thought Ori 1 was too hard. It feels similar to Final Fantasy 13. Code Veins Anime AF. Yeah, I mean, it does have that anime quality to it when you listen to the music, and I love playing games in their native language. I prefer it. I absolutely loved having a game where I could, you know, pick Korean. I told my Korean friend, he was very proud of me. I said, I recognize the Korean characters because it doesn't say English and then Korean. Like, it doesn't have the word Korean in English. Like, it's literally Korean in the Korean language. And I recognized the symbols. I was like, oh yeah, that's Korean. I'm going to pick that because I wanted it to sound like that. It just, to me, that was important. I remember doing that in Tsushima. I've done that in Rise of the Ronin. I'm not going to get preachy on it. I don't care how you play. Me personally, I enjoy the game way more when they're speaking the language of, like, the people that are in the game. I like that quite a bit more. I understand not wanting to read subtitles, though. I get that. Like, that can be a distraction or an immersion breaker, you know what I mean? The start of Stellar Blade kind of made me flash back to Mass Effect 3. Oh yeah, where like everything's bad and crash landing on a planet. Guys, nice strong turnout today. If you enjoyed the Stellar Blade demo, we'd love to hear from you in chat. Hit subscribe so you can talk in my chat. Subscribing is totally free. Do me a second favor here and smash that like button, all right? And a lot of the times we've been saying, hey man, smash that like button, and YouTube's been kind of finicky, so make sure it's saving your like. Give me that thumbs up. Let's get 200 likes on this video. Appreciate seeing so many people tune in for this. I really enjoyed this on Friday. If you haven't seen my gameplay, here's me figuring out the perfect dodge. You can go into training when you go to the camps. And actually, I think you just have to go into your skill tree to do this. And it was actually giving me some trouble. Like, the timing was just very, very strange. And other people have complained about this. I saw people went into my comments and they were like, I had the exact same problem with perfect dodge. They're like, I just couldn't get any consistency out of it. I would love to know, answer me this, Eugene. When you do the boss challenge, have they spent more points for you? And have they spent it on the one that makes perfect dodge easier? Like, do you have the better perfect dodge in the boss challenge, or did I just get better at it? Because I was pulling off perfect dodges in the boss challenge more than I did in the rest of the game. Now, I assumed that was because they had spent the skill, or I had just gotten better. Like, I'd gotten better at reading when to do it. I think boss fights are a little bit easier than fights like this because some of the boss attacks, the wind-up is a little bit easier to read. Some of these wind-ups are a little faster, so it's like you really got to time the dodge perfectly. The demo is great. It sold me. We honestly need we need more demos, as it's a great way to sell your game. Or in the case of Forspoken, let me know the game is not for me. Yo, QBZ, keeping the single gifted train going, taking us to 4 members on the day. Thank you so much for doing that, QBZ. Stellar Blade is pretty impressive for a first game on a console from a mobile developer. I just got good. They didn't have this. I looked at the skills during the boss challenge. You definitely have to press it. Oh, you haven't looked. But you definitely have to press it at the last second. Yeah, there are skills that make the dodge easier. There are skills that make perfect parry easier as well. The blink skill for perfect dodge works better. Well, no, you're misunderstanding though, Ron. The blink is specifically for the big blue attacks. Yellow attacks, you can't do blink. You've got to do perfect dodge. Unless I'm misunderstanding how it works, the way I understand it is blink is intended for the blue attacks. And the yellow attacks, you have to dodge those. You've got to get out of the way. There's also just basic attacks. Like, I don't think you can blink through normal attacks, can you? I thought blink was when it was a blue attack and then your sword flashed blue. I might have that fact incorrect. I might be wrong on that, but that was how I understood it. I put on the spine armor mod that gives you better windows. Oh, you can literally put on a mod that gives you better windows. Does it give you better windows for dodge and parry, or just the dodge? They unlock the better dodge and parry in the boss challenge. Okay, thank you, Insomniac Black. That's probably why I was actually getting perfect dodges in the boss fight. They had spent the skill and gave it to me, because like I was like, man, I'm really getting it. But no, that makes sense. Thymesia was very, very similar. The minute you spent the skill point to get the better parry window, the whole game felt different. Blink is only for blue attacks. Okay, I was correct then. Yeah, you can't just blink anytime you want. Yellow is dodge. The blue attacks you blink forward. Purple is back and circle. Oh, so for purple, you have to do back and circle. You can't just do... Okay. I was somehow surviving the purple attack. Maybe I was doing that by accident. Purple is the same as blue. It's just backwards instead of forwards. So you do the same thing. Is there a purple flash on your sword? Does it give you that player feedback, that player clue? Or do you have to just time the purple one? I love the player feedback in this game. Like, once I started clicking with like, okay, that's what that means. That's what that means. I need to do this when this happens. I thought it felt great. I found it easier to do a block buffer for dodge and parry. Tap block prior to dodge and parry. What? So you tap block prior to dodge and parry? How do you tap it prior to the parry? Because you have to bring it up at the very last second. Aren't you putting yourself into a bad spot by doing that? Exospines and gears have perk traits for upgrading your attack percentages and combat speed and so on. Well, you guys are making me want to play even more now. Like, that all sounds great. Purple is just last second back dodge. I think I was doing that just by accident. I think I was just dodging out of it, thinking like, oh, I'll wait until last second. I'm pretty certain at least twice I got away from the purple attack because I was like, I don't know, this wasn't in the tutorial, or this wasn't in the demo. Both parries and dodges have to be pressed at point of contact. The animation doesn't hang about to catch the moves and do it. It's all a rhythm. Making perfect dodge and parry easier through skills tells me the speed of the game is going to ratchet up in intensity. You have to give players the tools to react to potentially how fast the game gets. See, what's interesting about that, Infinite, is I remember in Thymesia, I got to a boss, and I was telling everybody when I was playing against him, I was like, I'm pretty sure that you're supposed to be parrying this guy, right? And I went to one of the little, whatever they were called, lamps or trees or whatever, and I completely rebuilt my skill tree, and I got the better parry window. I made parrying better, and I smoked him. Like, the whole fight changed because I was like, okay, now instead of having to like get out of the way, I could kind of stand toe to toe with the guy. It was really, really satisfying. So if they do something like that in Stellar Blade, where the combat gets faster and harder, and you need those skills, that sounds awesome. The only reason I don't know if they're there because they are going to make everything crazy later in the game is because you can get them pretty early, right? ProQuill, that's your first ever gifted membership? Nice, dude. Yeah, Thymesia felt really, really good. It did. I liked it. I wish I would have had time. I remember it was around the time my kids started playing games with me instead of playing games by themselves. And so I had to put it down because, like, my son, he wanted to play a game with me instead of just, like, booting up a game and playing by himself. It's not just dodge backwards, says Eugene. The purple dodge is a skill. It's in the skill trees. Do you get like a player feedback was my question, Eugene. So do you get like with the blink, you get a blue flash on your sword, and that's when you do blink. Do they do something similar with the purple attacks? If this game goes from feeling sluggish and then feels better by adding skills, then they made it backwards. Adding skills should change the game, not make it playable. Right. So Fuzzy is saying something in the members-only Discord that I anticipated people saying, and I agree with it to a certain degree. I remember thinking that about Timesia. I was like, you gave me a parry, and you intentionally made the parry not that great, and then I can make parry better with my skills. And I remember saying that I didn't agree with that. I don't think my perspective is that rigid anymore. And the reason it's not that rigid anymore is because, I'll give you an example from like Metroidvanias. I've played Metroidvanias before, and I remember having this experience. It might have been in Prince of Persia. I can't remember which one it was, where I was saying to myself, man, it would be great if I could jump and dash in the air. These fights, the way the rhythm of the fights was going, there was commonly situations where I was like, dude, I really wish I could jump and dash in the air. And I felt that the game was even sort of pushing me toward that with the design of the enemies. And then all of a sudden, I got to jump and dash. I got the ability to dash in the air. And it felt fantastic, right? So, and Shelly's saying it, right? It's kind of a Metroidvania thing. It's designed to make you feel like you're getting stronger, and it feels like skill-based progression. Like you're getting better. Think of it this way, too. If you spend, I don't know, let's say you spend X number of hours, and you're like, man, I'm having a hard time with this perfect dodge. I'm having a hard time with this perfect parry. And then they let you spend a skill point to make it better. To me, that's like running with ankle weights on, and then you take the ankle weights off. It's almost like you went through some training. You went through kind of like almost like a boot camp. And now that the windows are better, you're like, oh man, I'm really good at perfect dodges and perfect parries. Like it's almost maybe going to make you better at the game. It also seems like you can buy those skills really early on. So I don't necessarily know if I agree with what I originally thought when I was playing Timesia. I think it's okay to say your dodging and your parrying will get better with time. Instead of like right out of the gate, you're just able to dodge and parry no problem. As long as you know how to read telegraphs and you've got the timing of the game down, right? Like that's assuming that you're getting better at the game. You're adapting and improving. Reminds me of Devil May Cry is because you can unlock Table Hopper, which is a perfect dodge. They may want to give you the choice in playstyle. It's fascinating that there are essentially 4 different types of dodges: regular, perfect, blink for blue, and then the purple or the pink. Like, I don't think even dodgeball games have that many types of dodges. That's good. Dodgeball games. How a parry timing window feels is dependent on reflexes and skills. Some people don't have an issue with very tight timing windows. They're rewarded by being able to use other skills. This is well stated, Just Wait. I was going to say something to that. If you feel like the parry and dodge windows are totally fine, that's 4 skill points you can spend elsewhere. It's 2 skill points for each one. Like if you want to make parries easier or perfect dodges easier, it's 2 for each. So that's 4 skill points you could spend on something else. Also, there could be people that just like the challenge. You know, it's kind of like when people do a naked level 1 run in Elden Ring or something. You could do that in this game. You could run the skin suit. You could not spend into making parry, perfect parry or perfect dodge any easier, and that could be viewed as sort of a challenge. Sort of a way of playing the game where it's going to be a lot harder because those windows are so much tighter. Some people just like that. I mean, I am not like that. I like a challenging game. I don't like a game where I feel like I don't like putting my head in a vice, if that makes sense. Another way this is unique to Souls is that when you die midway through a level, all the enemies don't respawn. The ones you killed stay dead. They only respawn if you rest at a camp. Way less annoying. Yeah, I do think that those types of gameplay rhythms don't bother me that much, you know, but I do think it can make a flat tire fight more like almost maybe unnecessarily frustrating. You know, like let's say you're fighting a mini boss. You know, I was fighting that guy. He kind of looked like this guy, but he had the spiked club, right? He had the spiked club. And I was fighting him, and I was having a hard time with him. It was nice that, like, okay, I'm trying to figure this guy out. I'm trying to get better at fighting this guy. And I could, like, sort of, like, I could kind of keep going back to fight him instead of, oh, he killed me. Now I got to kill 10 guys to get back there again. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know that every game is different. But for me, one of my favorite things to do is when you almost have a boss, just retry it. Just let me retry it. They do that in Rise of the Ronin. Now, I've actually not died in a long time in Rise of the Ronin. I've gone a pretty long time without dying. Now, some of that is because I'm doing all the side quests and I'm getting a teeny bit over leveled, which that's fine. I kind of like playing a game like that. I like playing completionist, and then you end up feeling a little bit stronger than everybody. You know, everybody likes to play games differently. I like to clear the map, and clearing the map, you know, tends to make you a little bit stronger, you know. He streamed no damage with skin suit, and he managed on the boss challenge. Oh, really? My favorite shield in God of War Ragnarok was always the one that gave a larger parry window. It was very helpful against the bosses. Yeah, I'm with Sadiqwa. Like, I don't like brutally punishing. I like a game where it's challenging. I like a game where the boss, you know, is going to beat the tar out of me a couple of times. I'm going to kind of figure it out. I'm going to kind of learn the rhythms. You know, there's been a couple of fights in Ronin where these big dudes are like grabbing me by the head and throwing me or hitting me like a baseball, you know, and then you're motivated to kill that guy. You're like, that guy just disrespected me, you know, treating me like a baseball. So I think this game hits that note of this fight that you just did is tough. Come back and try again. Instead of this fight that you just lost in is tough. Fight your way back through 15 enemies to get here. You know, I remember in Dark Souls 3, everybody always telling me, just run past them, just run past them. Because so many Souls fans, they just get to that point where it's like, I just want to get back to the boss and beat the boss. I don't want to fight all the enemies along the way. So you start to learn very quickly. I remember a couple of bosses in particular in Dark Souls 3. Like, I got pretty good at running. It's a great skill to have in Dark Souls. I got pretty good at running past enemies, you know. Clearing the map was my jam in Ghost of Tsushima. Explored every nook and cranny. Yeah, and then you end up pretty dadgum strong. You know, you have a lot of spirit. You have a lot at your disposal. You know, you can heal quite a bit in those games, you know, when you clear the map. You also don't lose any progression when you die. You don't lose all your XP. There's no souls to lose. Another thing, Shelly, that puts this, like I said, it's kind of in the middle ground. It's like there are Souls-likes, and then there are like really, really laid-back action-adventure games. This is kind of in the middle. Like, it borrows some things that you might find familiar from a Souls game, like punishing combat, really big, grotesque bosses, really tight windows for your parries, really tight windows for your dodges. You know, that's kind of borrowed from the Souls. You know, going to these little encampments and leveling and spending, you know, your resources or whatever, or practicing. But then it also kind of borrows from like an action game where you're not going to have those overtly punishing encounters where you've got to do everything all over again, or, oh, you lost all of your XP. You know, I think, and here's where you learn how to do, I learned how to do Blink here in this portion. This is really, really fun. This is really, really satisfying. I like this one a lot, especially in the big boss challenge. I particularly enjoyed it. So what you want to pay attention here is the enemy will flash blue, and then your sword flashes blue. The sword flashing blue is when you want to hit the circle. So it takes me a second to figure it out. See, it takes me a second to figure it out. Because it says, can only be used when an enemy is attempting a fatal attack. Dodges and teleports behind the enemy. It just says press forward and circle. So there, I get it. It took me a few tries. But that's what I like about this game is like once you figure that out, it's like, oh. And then you're going to get really mad at yourself when you miss those opportunities. There was a couple of times in the boss challenge, like he would do the blue charge right at the beginning, and I would miss it. I would miss the window, and I was always, every time, I was so mad at myself. I was like, come on, Lono, what are you doing? Yeah, the enemy flash is just a heads up that it's coming. That's right. That's right. Yeah, the enemy flash is just to let you know there's a big fatal attack coming. You wait for the sword, which makes it just, in some instances, you know, it makes it kind of easy. But again, in the chaos of a boss fight, like you'll come out of this tutorial thinking, oh, I've got this, I'll get this every time. And then you get in that boss fight, dude, and it gets a little crazy, it gets a little chaotic, and you'll mess it up. I do those like 3 times in a row before I pass myself. What? The first time you go through an area in Souls, you usually move slowly. You kill everyone to explore. Once you explore it, the game and the enemy design makes it easy to just run by things. Am I going to try Marvel Rivals? No, I don't really play or cover games like that. I can get by in Stellar Blade, but if I found the training simulator very helpful in getting my timing down, then I found my own pace. Yeah, don't be afraid to go into the training situation and, you know, practice some of the moves and some of the elements of combat. Souls-likes often annoy me by wasting my time. Like, I'll die to a mini-boss, and I'll have to fight my way back. Waste a load of time fighting 10 enemies, arrive weakened, die again. Frustrating. Right, and see, there are people who think that's like part of the art, that's part of the element of the game that they like, is that it's an endurance thing. They love the, you know, you can't just, let me say it this way. You can't engage with the game like a string of pearls, like everything's contained. Like, I've killed the enemies, okay? Now it's time to fight the bosses. I don't have to mess with these enemies anymore. I'm just fighting the boss. Boss. Okay, boss is dead. Do this. So it's almost like everything is segmented and separated. And in a Souls game, they would say, well, no, it feels like it's more of a flow. It's more of a endurance test. Can you get back to this boss, not lose your patience, not play poorly, you know, and get back to the boss with your full health? I tend to agree with you, Shelly. That starts to grate against my sentimentality. Every player's different, right? You got me onto the car, Kirk. Yeah, Kirk and I are going to be talking later about Borderlands 4 and everything going on with Gearbox. That'll be a fun discussion. Make sure you guys are here for that. If you're enjoying this discussion, smash that like button. Hit subscribe so you can talk in the chat. Subscribing is free. We are going for a member goal this week if you want to help with that. We're going for 2,300, and every 25 members, I give 5 back. So that's a great way for us to kind of link arm in arm and do this thing together. Here's some of the cinematics in this game are quite good. I love the enemy design too. I love the boss design. I think the bosses look great. The high you get after beating a boss that killed you 20 times is amazing. Yeah, and I think that for me is where Stellar Blade is giving me that middle ground that I love. You know, Rob V bumps the line to 5 members, tempting a 20 bomb to get us to 25. We'll see if any of the giant Leviathans are in the chat. Kicking it with Timmy B also gives one, takes it to 6. That's still an Agents of Chaos. You guys have tempted them before with those 20 bombs. Or we did a 26 single train the other day. We didn't even let the big boys come in and show off. But I think this game's sort of landing in a middle ground where I love fights like this, where I'm kind of like, okay, I'm analyzing the timing, I'm analyzing the movements. I know there's going to be, you know, there's going to be a phase 2 where he gets harder, stronger, whatever. You know, I think that just triggered it there with, his lightning. He slams ground, like throws you back. Use of lighting in this fight is actually quite good with the lightning strikes. Are you noticing the more, not the, let me rewind it. Not the isolated ones that he does, but like the actual lightning flashes that light up the entire area. Like the ground. Like right there. I think this game looks really, really good. I mean, I expected it to look good. It also runs. It also runs really, really well. In a similar way to Metroidvanias, where there are lots of side routes that are high up with platforming, or they're shut off and they're locked. So presumably there is some backtracking later on with new info, with skill, with codes. Yeah, I'm not sure, because there are doors that are locked. I wonder, are they locked just because it's a demo? Right? Is it locked because it's a demo and they're like, just like, no, we want you to just take a straight line to the boss. It's raining too. That's normally tanking other games. Did you play on PS5 or PC? This game is not on PC. It is only on the PS5. This game has great presentation, the graphics, the art direction, the UI. Yeah. If you guys are having trouble chatting, I'm not sure if there's an issue. Mine just disconnected and reconnected. So if that's happening, hopefully it doesn't happen too much. Every once in a while, the YouTube chat acts a little squirrely. And every once in a while, it tells me that I'm disconnected from chat, and then it says reconnecting, and it just did that a second ago. Fuzzy says, sorry if I'm the total opposite of you in this game. See above. If you need a bad game for Friday, you can play Stellar Blade. Glad you like it, though. Rise of the Ronin is how you do it, not this game. Too much but not enough substance. Also, that wasn't your cap card. It was the game. I had the same issues playing on a TV. I have to agree. I really didn't notice any performance issues like I came across with on Final Fantasy Rebirth. The game actually seems polished. I'm shocked. I think games like this are in this, and we might start. I don't know. We might see more of this generation. Okay, I think you might start to see more games that go for contained areas that are linearly connected, as opposed to these big sprawling open worlds. Because when you go linear and you have everything more connected, like you're making levels instead of a world, I think you probably gain performance when you do that, if that makes sense. Some of the doors only open one way, made it back to a few of the locked ones. Oh, okay, so there's like maybe like secret pathways to get to them. Okay. Get Nixus to do the port. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they would have plans to port this, because basically Sony stepped in for the publishing. So they don't own the studio. They don't own the studio. I'm assuming they probably own the property, and then they basically picked up the funding, the publishing bill. Lono should give this mobile studio more credit. I'm not sure why you're saying that. How am I not giving them credit with the last 62 minutes of praising their game so much? Did you notice the raindrops hitting the player's screen? Yeah, I did. Like, sometimes it would hit the screen and, like, almost, like, obstruct your view a little bit. Like, it was almost like it was, like, landing on a lens. It was kind of cool. Yo, good morning, Javier. Like Lies of P level design, that had great performance, too. Yeah, I just think you're going to see... I think you're going to see more... I think you're going to see more and more games do that. I think they're going to move away from this idea that, like, well, we have to create this big open world, and that creates so many hurdles for performance and graphics, and it can be very taxing. And to say instead, no, we're going to go with a level approach. You know, Jedi Survivor, I think, did a good job of this, even though that game ran really, really poorly, and it still runs really poorly on PC. I feel like they did a good job saying we're going to have levels that are pretty open, because the levels and the planets and stuff are pretty awesome. I'm going to rewind this thing they do after you beat the boss and just see if we get any clues as to how open the game might be in certain areas, because that seems like another arena setup right here. more contained. Yeah, that's an arena. That's a boss. Another boss. Yeah. Well, that's kind of like the one we fought in the boss challenge. That is the one we fought in the boss challenge, I think. Okay, jumps up there. See, that looks pretty open, but again, that looks like a level. Not a big open world. They look like levels. And I think that that's totally fine. I remember when I heard... Yeah, and then here's some gunplay, if you guys haven't tried that out yet. I remember when people heard that, like, Final Fantasy 16 was going to be open area and not open world, and I remember, like, not really knowing what that meant. And obviously, I have my own criticisms of Final Fantasy 16's performance, but their level design, I actually like quite a bit. Yeah, there's like a grinding skateboarding thing she's doing at one point in the montage as well. You just joined. Good to see you, Perfect Cell. Thanks for being here. Having open areas seems to be easier to maintain performance. I'm not a dev, so I could be wrong. No, I think that does help with performance. I do, because you aren't trying to maintain this huge open space. It's like you've got it, it's contained, it goes to the next area, and then that area is contained, you know. And if I know people might be critical of that, but I think that's probably going to be a more common theme that you see going forward. I thought this game it's good, but the combat's kind of lacking. What do you think's lacking in the combat? Because I loved the demo a lot, and then when I played the boss challenge, I liked the combat even more after doing the boss challenge. Guys, do me a favor. If you haven't smashed the like button yet, do that. Let's get 300 likes on the video. You guys are crushing it. We're about an hour into the stream. Thanks so much for being here today. Now, as far as Fuzzy saying there's not enough substance and, you know, too much butt or whatever, I actually worry that that's going to become like a trope of like, well, that game's popular because, you know, the character's like super attractive. Okay. I actually hope that they get enough praise for their game and what they've done with the combat and what they've done with how the game feels and how the game runs, and not just like, oh, people are liking the game because the main character's hot. Like, in my opinion, once you're in the game and you're actually fighting, she sort of fades into the background a little bit. Like, I don't notice her nearly as much once I'm fighting. Like, I'm watching the enemy. Like, obviously people watching streams are, you know, potentially paying attention to her. But did you enjoy the story aspect? I mean, I'll be honest, the story seems fine. It seems pretty straightforward. You know, we're crashing on this place, everything's bad, kill all the bad stuff. You know, I don't typically play a game like this expecting some I don't know, some story that's gonna, like, I'm gonna carry with me for forever. There are games that are far more narrative driven, and that's typically what I look for, you know, in a game that's more narrative driven. Is like, I look for a really meaningful story. If this game's story is pretty basic, I'm okay with that. It could have some pretty amazing twists and turns, we don't know. You know, awesome moments of betrayal, awesome moments of victory, things like that. Someone explain to me what's wrong with having attractive characters. I mean, if you're insinuating that I said that, I didn't say that. There are people that are, you know, seemingly against it. I also think that's getting overstated. I don't think people are against it, but I definitely think people are, you know, IGN's review was, you know, where they said that the creator has never seen a real woman. That's just got to be one of the most self-report juvenile things I've ever seen. The character model is designed after a real person. There are people that really look like that in real life. So, you know, most male characters in video games are tall and really muscular, and I'm not naturally built that way. I'm not tall. I don't have an overtly muscular frame. Even if I were to work out a bunch, you wouldn't be like, well, that guy's a brick house, he's huge. I'm just not built that way, right? Physically, I'm not built that way. I don't care if the average game that I've played over the last 20 years, I've played as like a tall, extremely muscular man. That just doesn't bother me. And so it was IGN France that wrote that review. So, you know, I do think there's good things to be said about some of the tropes of everybody's charging into battle to fight a dragon, and all the men are clad in armor and the women are in bikinis. I think that's totally fine to point out that that's kind of silly and contextually stupid, right? In a game like this, I think my only issue is that everybody's focusing on, not everybody, a large portion of the commentary about this game is about how hot she is. And I would just like the developers to get more credit than motion capturing a buxom young woman. Like, okay, wow, you did great motion capture. She's very attractive, and the physics of the game make her body, you know, jiggle in certain ways. Great. Tons of developers could do that, you know. A developer can put somebody in the mocap room and make a really attractive player model. They've done so much more than just that. Does that make sense? Like, they haven't just done that. I just got a couple of perfect dodges in this sequence. Showing you that the perfect dodge, you know, once they open up that window, it really does help. So that's my only issue. If you want to celebrate her backside or how hot she is, man, you go right ahead. I don't care. But I feel like that's becoming such a prominent narrative about this game that I would not want that to be the main narrative. It's like, no, the combat's great. The performance of the game's great. The graphics are awesome. You know, it's not that serious. I don't think it's that serious. I'm just like, man, I hope that people praise the game for more than just how hot she is. A 5 spot from Sneaky Wolf. Go to any Gold's Gym and people would change their minds real quick on bodies don't look like this. Which, for sure, there are plenty of people that look like that. You know, the person that they used for the character model looks like that. Right, Sadiqwa. Yeah. Maybe they're just unaware, you know. It's annoying that her body has become such a focus. I didn't think that the game really puts that much attention on the bod outside of her coming out of the pod at the start. It's not about that. I don't know if I agree with that the game doesn't put much focus on it. They definitely spent a good amount of time making sure everything was looking pristine with respect to her outfits and her body. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that they didn't spend a lot of time on that. Like, you know, they really make sure that that's in frame regularly, you know. Folks forget this Asians develop the game and they don't have the standards of Western developed games. Folks that want to complain need to address the culture where it came from. Well, and I think that's part of the problem. Like somebody said, IGN France wrote it, and even some of the Western outlets will likely say things about her buxom shape or whatever. But I think that is well stated that oftentimes people betray their own cultural presumptions. Like, we're at a time, and there's a cultural moment in the West where people aren't necessarily condemning it, but they're saying, can we maybe move away from this? And you don't have to agree with them or even really disagree with them. That's just their viewpoint. If some developer says, we want to make a game and we want the character to just look more, you know, normal's a terrible word, so I'm not going to say normal. We want the person to look just more average, right? They're not particularly shapely. They're not particularly strong. They just look sort of like an average person you find. Now, they can do that with their game. That's fine. That's your choice. But I think people need to remember that these are fantasies. These are fantasy environments. And generally speaking, it'd be like reading a fantasy novel and everybody's really average. Nobody's really strong. Nobody's really valiant or brave. Nobody has any particularly entertaining or awesome powers. That would be a pretty boring book, would it not? Well, one of the methods of storytelling in video games is, here's this really attractive character. Here's this really strong character. They're not you. right? They're bigger than you, they're stronger than you, maybe they're better looking than you, and you're like, okay, that lends itself to the fantasy, right? Like when I pick the big, burly, strong character who's like, walking around with a giant sword and an axe, like that's not me. I'm not some MMA fighter bodybuilder guy. I'm a pretty skinny 5'6" dude. Like I'm not very tall or anything. So that's part of fantasy. I think that's part of storytelling, is that some people are going to want to tell a story where all of the characters are beautiful, and we've all seen this before with soap operas and with, it's not an accident that when you watch a show like Lost, 80% of the people that crash landed on the island were like really attractive. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not an accident. They cast people that are good looking. And you're free to make a game where you don't do that. Right? You're free to make a game where you're like, yeah, we're not doing that. We don't want to do that with our game. We don't want to make a game where that's okay. That's fine. You can do that with your game. That's fine. Here's the thing, though. Scolding other developers for doing it is stupid, I think. You know what I mean? Like getting preachy about how like another developer shouldn't do that. I think that's where people are going awry. If you want to make a game where your character is not buxom, is flat-chested and just more plain looking, that's fine. You can do that. You're free to do that. That's your artistic vision for your game. But you can't get into imperatives and be like oughts and ought nots. Like, well, you ought not do that with your game. Well, who are you to say that? Why are you the arbiter of what ought or ought not happen with game design or character design? There were YouTube thumbnails on my PS5 showing her butt in a thong. I didn't search it. I didn't seek it out. It was just in the banner below the game. Yeah, I mean, there were people definitely getting some screenshots when the demo landed the first time. Yeah. But when the outlets criticize it as a Western-developed game doing this, they're ignoring that it's not. It's Asian-developed, and their perception is vastly different, just be honest. Right, and I think that's when people make the mistake of... And this would be really upsetting to people who view themselves as like they're being, really progressive and really forward-thinking. If you told them that they were being geocentric in their review, that would really upset them. But I do think there's a level of being geocentric where you're writing as a 21st century American and you're like ignoring the fact that, Korean or Japanese culture within the development world of video games, they think differently about this stuff. They think differently about monetization. They think differently about like how people, like women are betrayed, how they're portrayed. Like they just think differently. Their art, their cinema, their animated series that they create are very different than the ones that are created over here. And I think that's normal to have those cultural underpinnings that then sort of they flesh out, no pun intended, they flesh out into the art. They flesh out into their storytelling and into the movies and into the video games. At any point in the game did Eve drop her sword on the floor, get over and bend over to pick it up, It's not a game like that is what I'm getting at. Right, and you're being hyperbolic to make a point, but I don't agree with your point, Shelley. Like, I think it's okay for a game to make a beautiful character and to periodically, that's front and center. You know what I mean? That's front and center. Like, it's pretty obvious that they want her body to be one of the things that are focused on in the games. Focused on in the game. right? When you're in the middle of combat, sure, I don't have time to like look at her rear end, right? I'm fighting a giant dinosaur, okay? But when she's, walking around, when there's cinematics, even when you pause the game and go into it, she does like a slight jiggle every time. Like, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying call a spade a spade. Like, there is an amount of focus put on her body. You can call that spade what it is, but you can also say it's not that big of a deal. You can largely ignore it. I can put her in outfits and I can dress her in a way that I think is fine and appropriate. Like, it's not like, oh my gosh, like, like I wouldn't want my kids to come down if she was in the skin suit, because they'd be like, what the heck's going on? Why are you playing a game and why is she naked? Like, they would probably think it's funny because they're young. They'd be like, she's naked. Ha ha ha. They would think it's hilarious. But I obviously wouldn't want to expose them to something like that because they don't have categories for it. They don't have categories for that kind of, overt, very obvious objectification. They don't know. They wouldn't understand it. I'm not saying Eve's body is not bang. I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying it's not in your face. She's not unnecessarily flaunting it in your face. She's not. Maybe it's a guy radar. I mean, I would say that, yeah, especially straight males are going to be way more, they're going to pick way more up on a lot of the cues and a lot of the nuance of how she moves and stands and how she does certain things. Not that you can't notice because you're, if you're a straight woman, but I do think we have probably developed more awareness of that just over the years. But I also think that the developers are being pretty apparent with it. There's just times where it's obvious. It's like, okay, we get it, dude. When you open a chest, her chest shakes all the time, no matter what she's doing. No, I didn't try any of the different performance modes. People have brought up the game's story has been bad. The politics being pushed, the characters that have been acting weird, and more. Oh, you're saying game stories in general have been bad, or are you saying that people are saying the story in this game is bad? How appealing would the main character be if she was out of shape, middle-aged, Walmart employee named Tanya with chin hair? I mean, obviously you're being a little harsh. That's kind of the point of fantasy. You play as a lot of the times when you play or enter into a fantasy, you're playing as something that is exaggerated. Whether the character's size or their strength or even their bravery, a lot of the times it's exaggerated. We've seen people react in real life to scary situations and to fighting and to battles and to, being taken, all of a sudden being in a fight in a Denny's and stuff. Like, we've seen this, right? Like, a lot of people are not standing around being like super valiant and strong and brave. People are running. They're like, I'm getting the heck out of here, right? This is scary. So even if it's just someone's ability to stand, stand firm and fight for what's right, even that's exaggerated a lot of the times. That's part of fantasy storytelling, They're proud of their jiggle physics when no one with boobs like that would be going unsupported. Just saying. Right, exactly. Like, anybody who is that shapely wouldn't be running around without any form of support, for sure. For sure. Knowing your audience used to be a talent, but because of political correctness, we pretend we don't want sexy characters, but we do. I think that a lot of this gets exaggerated, though. I think there are still plenty of games coming out where they're unapologetically making the characters attractive, right? I think a lot of this gets completely overstated because people misrepresent the game sometimes. Like, as an example, I think a lot of the screenshots of Aloy, they've been photoshopped. Because, incels have got to incel. Like, they intentionally made her look fat and ugly. And it's like, I've never played that game and thought that Aloy wasn't good looking. She's pretty. If you actually look at any of the screenshots people have been putting out lately when they've been messing with photo mode and, having her, stand in foliage or having her, stand with her bow drawn, she's a pretty girl. Like, she's a pretty woman. And everybody, took really weird screenshots and were like making her look fatter, like, oh yeah, why does she look like this? And then the one guy made her look like a Maybelline, you know, model or whatever, and she looked stupid when he did that to her. So I was like, she looks ridiculous. Your one-dimensional, you know, idea of what women should look like, right? I think sometimes it's overstated. It's like not everybody can run around and look like they just walked off the set of Baywatch. Like some people are going to look differently than others. But I still think characters generally that are coming out in video games are attractive. She's pretty, she's just not petite. In what universe is she not petite? She's got a couple of outfits where you can see her stomach. What are you talking about? She's very petite. She just is usually, she's just wearing a bunch of armor, so she looks kind of clunky. She kind of runs in a way where, you know, she's wearing a bunch of stuff. She's not, if she's not petite, good night. That sounds like that's weird to say about her. But what I mean is I don't think there's this overarching trend where I think people really exaggerate. They're like, oh, they're making all the characters ugly now. What are you talking about? It's the same three screenshots that everybody uses. Aloy, the Fable character, and Mary Jane. Right, and the Aloy screenshot is intentionally bad or doctored. The Fable screenshot also is like, it's a funky angle. She's making kind of a gross face. She's like she's making kind of a weird face. And then Mary Jane, I still haven't gotten the straight story on why they changed what she looks like, but I didn't think Mary Jane looked that bad either. I was like, what's the big deal? Mary Jane in the first game wasn't a runway model. She just looked like a normal person. So did Peter. Like, they all look like normal people, and I think that's fine. I think that's one of the appeals of Spider-Man usually, is he's just like a normal guy. Now, I don't know historically what Mary Jane always looked like in the comic books, but those pictures are, I think, just creating this false notion that, like, every time you boot up a game, they made all the characters ugly. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, did you play Final Fantasy 16? Like, you know, have you played any of the games that have come out? Like, I don't think that this is true at all. I think the characters look awesome. She's not attractively small and dainty. What are you talking about? She's an in-shape warrior. Yeah, but when I hear petite, I hear small, like skinny. Maybe I'm using petite incorrectly. But like Aloy's arms are small. She's got an hourglass figure. Her arms are small. They're not like muscular. It doesn't look like she's been curling dumbbells. I don't know why. To me, she honestly looks like if she didn't have all the armor on, if they had her in just like a shirt and a pair of shorts, you'd be like, oh wow, yeah, Aloy's model is actually somewhat cliche. It actually is. Her character model is somewhat cliche. Hourglass figure, very flat stomach, a six-pack. Like, she does not look at all like people have tried to portray. Like, they tried to make her look fat when people were like photoshopping the pictures of her. Notice how we only discuss the attractiveness of female characters. It's weird and cringe. The gaming community needs to grow up. Well, and that's why I said, like, when I play through Final Fantasy 16, right, Clive is tall, dark, and handsome, you know, and he's got this amazing, you know, gravelly voice. And then every character he interacts with, not every, but a large portion of the characters he interacts with are also very attractive, right, with great voices. And it's like, come on, man, like, that's fine. That's part of the fantasy. I wouldn't have wanted to boot up Final Fantasy 16 and play as like a 5.5 foot tall guy that looks like me with like, you know, scrawny arms. Like, no, dude, I'm playing a fantasy. I want to be big and awesome and strong and attractive. That's part of the that's part of the storytelling. You know, that's part of the immersion, is that everything's not all of the time and not exaggerated to the 10th degree, but a lot of the times when you play a game like this, you know, everything's exaggerated. What about Abby and Ellie from The Last of Us? I don't have any issue with those character models at all. They look like people from those situations. They look like, people that have survived a zombie apocalypse. They look like normal people. They don't look like runway models, and that's fine. That's not what The Last of Us is supposed to feel like. Yeah, Sid is really attractive in Final Fantasy 16. Yeah. Sid's great looking. My wife saw Clive and she started watching me play the game. Right? Yeah, he's handsome. He's good. He's good looking. He's got like the dark broody thing going for him. It's good. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's fine. Like, and I think people are overreacting. Like, I don't think it's a big deal if a game has a character like Abby. I don't think it's a big deal if a game has a character that, is not ready to walk the runway. I think that's fine. I don't think it's as bad as everybody's saying, and I don't think there are as many preachy people about it as people think, right? I think there are definitely people that are trying to push against it, but I think a lot of that's projection. Like, as an example, there's a lot of guys out here with respect to Stellar Blade, and they're saying that Xbox said she was too curvy. Xbox never said anything about that. Like, Xbox is not out here pushing some narrative that you shouldn't make games like this and that your character shouldn't be curvy. There was some internal document that was giving, things to think about when designing your characters. Like, are the females, dressed for battle? Are you making them weaker? Which Asmongold thought that was hilarious. He's like, imagine a game that did that, where, like, if you pick the female character, she just does less damage, right? And he obviously thought that was funny. He was joking. He wasn't saying, like, oh, they should totally do that. But, like, that would just be so blatantly over the line that the only games I would say that have really crossed into that territory are games where everybody is wearing medieval armor and ready to fight a dragon, and the women are barely covered. That has certainly been a thing in some fantasy games. And I think it's fair to ask the question, like, is that sensible? And, should you design a game that promotes that? And if you decide, yes, that you do want to design a game that looks like that, that's your choice as the artist. And if you want to take that into consideration and say, yeah, no, let's put everybody in the same types of armor. Everybody should be, adequately covered for battle. We don't need the women running in a bikini to fight a dragon while the guys got on, 18 different pieces of metal covering every portion of him. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's fine. I think either perspective is fine. And then the market's going to respond accordingly. I think generally speaking, the large portion of the audience in the gaming world that is male is going to respond positively to a game like this. They're not going to suddenly wake up tomorrow and be like, I don't like looking at pretty women. It doesn't even have to be in a dirty way. It's just that they enjoy looking at a pretty woman. That's just something that when they play a game, that's something that they're looking for. I don't typically play a game based off of that. I don't care. It wouldn't have mattered to me one way or the other. My only issue with some of the JRPG themes and some of the themes in anime is I just want the women to not look like they're 13. I think that that's awkward when their voices sound very young and their faces look way too young. I think that that's just a little unnecessary, and I don't want to play a game like that. Thankfully, in Stellar Blade, everybody looks like adults for the most part. It's not like way over the line like some of the things I've seen. And I've seen pretty funny memes about it. Some of the anime gets a little sketch, okay? It gets a little sketch. Is this the convo we're going to have every time this game is brought up? Genuinely curious. Will the discourse ever be about the game? Well, I talked about that in the show open, Eugene. I said one of my biggest concerns about this game is instead of talking about the amazing graphics, performance, the enemy design, just how great the combat feels, how much depth there is in the combat, and all the cool things that you can do, how rewarding and fun it feels. Instead of talking about that, we're constantly going to be talking about, like, did you see the most recent clip of somebody climbing a ladder slowly and looking at her butt? And it's just like, and that's part of the reason as a man, and I've got my own principles and my own beliefs about objectification and how it's not healthy, right? I have my own personal beliefs, which I'm never going to put that out there and be like, you shouldn't make a game like this. But I would like to play this game and have it be about the game, right? I would like to play this game and not constantly have people being like, you know, and we've leaned into the meme a little bit with the one thumbnail, like, you know, but not to the degree that I think we've crossed any lines. But I also think that when the game comes out and I give my first impressions, right, and maybe I'm playing through it, and maybe we're talking about it in other contexts, or, you know, having other discussions about it. I don't want people, I would like people to know, like, oh, he's playing because he likes the game, not because he's, like, you know, perving out on the main character. Your beliefs have an accent, of course. Look, back to Stellar Blade, what concerns have you got? I do worry that the characters will not have depth. I'm after it to tell a memorable story. I really hope the characters grow into something. I'll be honest with you, I don't typically play a game like this for the story, because that's not what is being sold to me. Right? That's not what's being sold to me. I've never watched a single one of these trailers and thought, they're selling me a compelling story. They're selling me intense combat and really attractive characters. Like, that's the marketing of this game. When you see a trailer for, you know, Red Dead Redemption 2, when you see a trailer for, you know, The Last of Us, you know you're getting a game that very, very much centers around the story. The way they've marketed Stellar Blade, I've not once thought, dude, I'm going to play that game and the story's going to blow me away. I've never once thought that. And I think that that's okay. Eugene says, I don't give a blank about the story here. I want the combat. Like, I'm kind of that way with Ronin. Like, I like the overarching story, but with Rise of the Ronin, some of the side stories and some of the side content, I've been sort of skimming what they're saying. Like, okay, this character believes this character thinks that. So I understand the overarching world, but I'm not digging into the story to the same degree that I did in Ghost of Tsushima. And that's just because of the mood that I'm in right now. I'm just like, dude, I just want to go get in more fights, you know? New major order, liberate Malevolent Creek. There you go. Really, even a $70 game? The price point of a game does not determine what I want from it. Like, when I buy a $70 game, I don't go in with the expectation that it better have amazing graphics and performance, and an amazing story, and amazing combat, and, you know, a really long campaign, and replayability, and this. Like, I don't do that. Was there story in Elden Ring? Yeah, like, I didn't play Elden Ring for the story, and I had a perfectly fine time. Right? Like, I'll be honest with you, the story in Spider-Man 2, it was fine. It wasn't, like, award-winning. It was fine. It did the job. I primarily played Spider-Man because of the combat and the content loop. You know? I'm kind of in that spot with Ronin. Like, okay, the story's good. I like the story. I like the characters. I had a really cool moment just the other night where we went to the other island, or we went to the other map. And it was pretty awesome. It's like, all these people I've been engaging with, all these people that I'm sort of building bonds with, they're kind of like, it's kind of like, all right, let's go. It's kind of a moment. And it was cool. But it wasn't Red Dead Redemption story cool. It wasn't The Last of Us story cool. It was, oh man, this is pretty dope. I think there are different levels of storytelling. And in games like this, as long as the storytelling is good, and not terrible, I'm fine. I'm not expecting, even with just how they set up some of these scenes and some of these sequences, I just don't expect it to be I don't expect that to be one of the main selling points of the game. I don't. My major gripe with Ghost of Tsushima was that I couldn't even be honorable and stay with my uncle. I admit it's a good story, but I wanted the exact opposite of what they intended. Well, but you don't get to dictate the story in that. How could you be honorable and stay with your uncle when the entire theme of the game and the game's title is that you become the Ghost of Tsushima, which means you are no longer a samurai, you're something else. That story is so compelling and so interesting because the name of the game itself, like, you become something so much more than a samurai. How could you can't ask for an honorable story in that. The premise of the game and the premise of the story wouldn't work if you could be the honorable Ghost of Tsushima. That doesn't line up with what's happening, with what's necessary. Jin does what is necessary. He rises to something far greater than just a samurai. So then you staying honorable and staying with your uncle wouldn't even make any sense in that. And that's the beauty of it, is there's sorrow woven throughout him having to do what's right. There's sacrifice woven throughout him having to do what is necessary. And like, he knows he's abandoning something that was very meaningful to him. That makes the story so much more potent. I mean, it's a good story. It made me want to be a samurai and stay with the uncle. It's the uncle's character which made me wish I could. No. What I think you're putting your finger on is just how great of a job they did with the storytelling. You connected so strongly with a character that you would have liked an alternate path. I think that's good storytelling. I think good storytelling is when you're really angry at a particular character for doing something stupid or wicked, or you're like, oh my gosh, I wish that I could have stayed with that guy. That guy was really awesome. Or, you know what I'm saying? I think that's just proof that they're telling a great story. The fact that you're like, man, the uncle was so cool, I wish I could have stayed with him. Did you be the American fugitive guy hiding under the mountain? The toughest fight I have had in Rise of the Ronin was a guy that wanted his blowfish back. And I know that sounds like I'm joking. He had a gun sword. I forget what it's called. A bayonet something. I hadn't died in a really long time, and he almost got me. It was really frustrating. Because he would do stuff to you and knock you down, and then as you were getting back up, he would start a whole nother cycle. It was really, really hard to heal against him. He's one of the more challenging fights I've had. And it was just like a random encounter in the middle of the street where he's like, give me my blowfish back. And you're like, what the frick? And you're like, no. You know, and then he wanted to fight me. He was harder than some of the bosses I've fought in that game. He took me by surprise. It was his fighting method. That bayonet made it really, really tough. That he was constantly like shooting me and stunning me with it. Who are you interacting with, Abe? Somebody named Peter Parker? You see the double standard, though. OnlyFans is apparently good, but beautiful characters are going too far. Well, I certainly think there is cultural confusion around that subject right now. Like, yeah, exactly. Oh, this is empowering. This is great. Well, then what's the wrong with a game with a character like Stellar Blade? The woman willingly had her body used for the character. She was okay with it. So that makes it okay, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's cultural confusion right now on that subject. That fight was awesome, says Kirk, with the cutscenes and everything. Yeah, I liked the sequence. He just was whooping the tar out of me with that stinking gun. Like, every time I thought I was about to get him, he would do that quick shot at me, and it threw off all of my rhythm. Like, he really put me on my heels. He really did. Is it good? I don't want to buy this game just for the fan service. I'm not sure what you mean by fan service. I have no interest in buying a game because they put a buxom character as the lead. That doesn't matter to me. I don't care about that. When I can make my own character in a game, I don't do the, well, I'm going to pick a female character because if I have to look at her back, if I have to look at the back of a character, I want it to be a female. I've never done anything like that in a single video game, right? I remember playing Mass Effect 3 and I wanted to romance the doctor. She's the older doctor. She had like the gray hair. And that was because I thought she was the better character. I wasn't like, I've never played a game with that being like a hyper focus. And that's something that I've been wanting to talk about with this game is I would like to play this game, praise this game, review this game, showcase gameplay, and not have it be like, well, that's why people are playing it. No, we're playing it because it's an excellent game and the combat's awesome and the performance is really good. Not everybody playing this game is taking screenshots every 5 minutes and uploading videos on Twitter of like, oh, I climbed this ladder really, really slowly. Like, not everybody's playing the game that way. Not everybody is motivated that way. The game's incredible. I just hope it's what people talk about after launch. I'm so overseeing her assets on my feed. Gameplay is good. It can be outshined by this, surely. Fan service is a term in the anime community that basically just means booba or cheeks. Oh, in that environment, that's what they mean by fan service? I was expecting to be faster and like Devil May Cry, but it's slower and it's focused on defense, evades, parry, and hold defense. Can you explain that to my fiance so I can get this game, Lono? Thanks. Well, I mean, I'm not going to try and fight that battle for you, but I think you can play this game and have the character fully clothed, and you can play this game and focus on the combat and being awesome. And yes, there are going to be scenes where it's almost, I think it's almost comical at times, right? I think it's almost comical. It's like, okay, we get it. She's shapely, okay? You've well established that. Multiple times, multiple cutscenes. I think it becomes almost comical. But I also think it's easy to ignore, you know. Now, when I was 16, probably not. I probably wouldn't be able to like look past it and overlook it. But it's like, I'm 42, I'm married. You know what I mean? That just is not something that I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a video game with a hot character. Like, I don't care. You know what I mean? It just doesn't. There's no part of my brain that is like, oh yeah, I can't wait to play Stellar Blade for any of those reasons. And I don't care that there are people who really do celebrate that. That's totally fine. That's their own experience. That's their own world. You know, that's their own affinities and viewpoints. You know, if that's what you want to get out of Stellar Blade, fine. Actually, if there was more modest outfits you can put on her, that will help a lot. I mean, everything's going to be skin tight. You have to accept that. But my mission is like, can she just be clothed? Like, I don't need to run around in lingerie. You know, that's my issue. Because she's fighting grotesque monsters, you know. She's fighting grotesque monsters. It's not like she's like, hey, you know, I'm getting ready to go into battle here with a giant, disgusting, you know, pus-spewing lobster. I better head to Victoria's Secret before I go out. You know, that some of the outfits are obviously a little ridiculous. Hope there are outfits that are pretty mundane by comparison, just as an option. Like, oh, there's no family safe mode for this game. Like, no. Even when you have her normal outfits on, everything is thangin'. That's just the nature of the game, bro. Yeah, the black outfit was pretty awesome. She looked like she was ready to jump on like a motorcycle. Yeah. The black outfit in the boss challenge, I really liked. I thought that one was pretty dope. And then there's the green one, and then there was the one that she has on by default when you do the boss challenge, which is like the red with the the checkered pants or whatever. You don't know what she's thinking. Well, she's not She certainly is not distracting these grotesque monsters with her body. That's not even a possibility. They're like mutant alien things. I like the all black suit. Yeah, the all black suit's pretty nice. Yeah, I don't know what chest you're opening, Eugene. I open a chest right here and I just kick it. Are there different chests that you're saying she like bends over? She just kind of gives that a clunk with her knee. Emu Billy, you said you tried the demo. It wasn't what you thought it would be. You're no longer interested in it. What turned you off? I'm the opposite. It was way better than I expected. A single gifted from Angry Pete. Thank you so much, guys. Every day we have a daily goal of 25, and if we hit 25 members, I give 5 back to the community. We do have a weekly goal this week of hitting 2,300 members. We're at about 2,000 right now, and if we hit that goal, we will play a really bad game on Friday night. And those tend to be really fun streams where I pick like an intentionally really bad game and I play it. Madam's here with me. P-Dub H-Town says, let's get some members going. P-Dub H-Town's calling for some members. If you guys are going to hit these goals, we're going to have to start to rally, man. Last couple of weeks, we have really slipped. And we can only lower the goals so much. And we've decided to go with incremental goals in April. We think that'll be helpful. So 2,300 this week and then 2,500 next week to make it more achievable. And then we're trying to come up with fun things to do on Friday night that rewards the members and the people gifting. We were doing something different last month, and I don't think it vibed with people. I was like, oh, we hit the goal. We'll do a big stream for everybody. And the people paying for memberships are like, that doesn't really do anything for us. So we're trying to come up with segment ideas for Friday nights to make that more rewarding. A 5 spot from Sneaky Wolf says, I grew up in Asia. It's just their culture. Just watch more anime. They fight worldly threats and almost nothing sometimes. Yeah, and I think that's fine as like and this is something that like Western game journalists are going to have to accept, that it's a cultural difference. You have your own presuppositions and beliefs, you know, living in America, or the one person was like IGN France. It's like, and you know, acting like everybody else needs to abide by that is silly. And a 5 bomb from P-Dub H-Town. He puts his money where his mouth is. He says, come on, boys, let's get some members. And he drops a 5 bomb on chat, getting us to the halfway mark. Thank you so much, P-Dub H-Town. Do I think Stellar Blade's going to get review bombed? Oh, I don't know. Stone Spire comes in with a gifted. Thank you so much. Takes us to 13. Catching the vision and saying, let's push. I mean, I personally don't care if people review bomb on Metacritic. I think people that do that are stupid. On both sides. Like, you're just an idiot. You're not doing anything that achieves anything. All you're doing is proving that you don't have a meaningful life. Like, if you're having a meaningful life and you're enjoying the things that you enjoy, you're not going to go out of your way to crap on something that other people are enjoying. I just think that's a self-report. When people show up to gameplay streams to dog on a game, when people review bomb, they're just self-reporting that they're just a miserable person. Like, I don't know satisfied, happy people living meaningful lives that would spend a minute of their day doing any of that. So I don't care if it gets review bombed. You know, Metacritic is okay with review bombing because it's good for their platform. It draws more traffic to their platform. That's why they don't have any form of purchase verification on their website, because it would lower traffic, and they know that it would. Gangs with 36 months. That's 3 years. Appreciate the hard work you do bringing us great content daily. Keep it up. Thank you so much, Gangs. They sure love review bombing Dragon's Dogma. Dragon's Dogma's not getting review bombed. No. When you do stupid things and your game runs like crap and you get bad review scores on Steam, that's not review bombing. That's the consumer doing what they're supposed to do. Review bombing is now getting used so incorrectly. Review bombing is when people go to Metacritic and give the game a 0 and they've never touched it. Review bombing is not when people are like, this game is very poorly optimized, and they give it a bad score. Yes. Jim Sterling gave it a 3 out of 10. But that's like so much satire and joking. That's not meant to be taken seriously as a review. This is a lot of BS. The Western culture has over-sexualized and pushed for sexy outfits just as much. Let's remember Lara Croft, Blizzard games, and the sexy video game adverts. Right, but you're acting like it's still you're acting like it's still 20 years ago. A lot of games have tried to do that less and less. Right? They've tried to do it less and less. They're not... And I also think this is getting lost in the shuffle. So, like, Lara Croft in Tomb Raider and Rise of the Tomb Raider and Shadow of the Tomb Raider, those 3 games, she's pretty, but there's not, like, this overemphasis, and she's not running around super shapely and buxom, and you can't, like, put her in a skimpy outfit. So they went with a more realistic version of Lara Croft and instead of an exaggerated version of Lara Croft. So, like... I think there's been a slight movement in the West to say, we don't need to do this as much as we used to. This doesn't need to be this extreme. His score is factored into the Metacritic score? Well, it shouldn't be. His or her, their review scores should not be in the Metacritic score. It's not meant to be a serious review. Then you see what I'm saying? You shouldn't be able to make a joke review and give a game an intentionally low score and be factored into Metacritic. But are we going to act like the Dragon's Dogma Metacritic score is indicative of the game's quality? Its complete overarching quality? Have you seen some of the reviews from the PC guys on that game? They're not happy. Poorly optimized, completely unnecessary microtransactions. That Metacritic score... Whatever you believe about Jim Sterling's review is irrelevant. That score by itself is bogus. It doesn't represent the product. What represents the product almost always the best is the Steam score. That is almost every time going to be your best representation of the product because those are the people who bought the game. Not somebody who's trying to stay, in good with a developer or a publisher. The games media and the Metacritic scores are becoming window dressing. They don't matter as much anymore. They become argument points on Twitter between tribalists that have 2 brain cells. Like it doesn't even matter anymore. Like getting a good Metacritic score now, it's like, yeah, it's something to celebrate, or getting a good OpenCritic score is something to celebrate. But when a game has glaring performance issues, forget the microtransactions. When a game has glaring performance issues and hasn't been optimized well, and you basically give it a perfect score, how am I supposed to trust you to review a product? You know what I'm saying? It just doesn't even get a mention. It doesn't affect the score at all. Yeah, this game's a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, and it runs like cheeks. What are you talking about? A game can't be a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 if it runs poorly. What planet are we on? And a 5 bomb from On Nobody and takes us to 18. Now is a great time to gift members because we're going to do the gaming Ask Me Anything, which we're already kind of doing anyway. But I'm going to switch the chat to members only. This is a great time to become a member. This is a great time to gift a member. Always remember that if you become a member, you want to pick that $6 member tier. That's going to get you into the writer's room. And we are going to start doing something extra for the writer's room. We're going to start trying to kick off the writer's room with an extra piece of content. Maybe I react to a video or an article, stuff that I don't really feel like doing in the public, but I want to do for members. Another reason to become a member, another reason to upgrade from your gifted membership to a writer's tier or a standard member tier is that you're going to get more content. Instead of just getting to help us plan the next day's show, you might get me to react to a video or an article that ordinarily we don't do that kind of content on the channel. What I mean is that having the discussion over something like this is pointless. Gamers either complain that we over-sexualize or we bulk characters or they're not pretty enough. It's a fantasy. Well, here's what I'm going to say to that. What that represents in the market is that there are different people in the market. So if you want to make your game and you want to avoid stereotypes or tropes. You want to avoid, extremely shapely characters. Okay? That's your choice. You can do that. If you want to make people look more average, more middle of the road, not exaggerated, right? They're not super skinny and they're not obese, right? They're just sort of like right down the middle as far as body shape and size. That's totally fine. Just know that if you make that a part of the messaging, or you make that something that you're being kind of preachy about, then you have to remember the target audience of a lot of video games, especially video games that feature, women in them. That's going to appeal to the male audience. And if you push against expectations and desires of that audience, it might have an undesired effect. You might have people that are like, I'm not interested in this. Like the Fable character. The reason the Fable character reaction is so silly is that's a game where you make your own character. So they're not going to, that entire thing was stupid. Again, it's an intentionally unflattering picture of a character who you don't have to play as. Everything this game does, other games do it better. It's just this one has some big boobied broad in it. That is simply untrue. Like, number one, you haven't played the whole game. Number two, to make such a sweeping generalization makes your input easy to ignore. Everything this game does, other games do it better. There's no way you can substantiate that claim. That's just like a sweeping reductionist viewpoint of a game, right? If you're memeing, sure, but this game, I've played a lot of games with melee-based combat and tight parry windows. I've never played a game like this before. I've played Sekiro, I've played Tsushima, I'm playing Rise of the Ronin right now. I think this game's got a lot of good things and fun things to offer. Now, if you want to be like, well, you need to play Bayonetta, or you need to play these other JRPGs. No, I don't. I don't need to play every game in the world so that I know every mechanic in the game might have existed somewhere else as another version of itself. People were doing that to me with Rise of the Ronin. Like, I was praising aspects of Rise of the Ronin's combat, and then I get these people in my comments and in my chat that are like, well, but we already could do this in other Team Ninja games. So, does that make it bad? Does that make it lower quality? Does that make it unenjoyable or unfun? Like, this idea that, like, if a game does anything that has been done before, or if a game uses any mechanics or ideas that we've seen before, that means the game's bad. I think that I don't think that's a good argument. It's not intellectual or logical. It's built on a premise that I feel like doesn't make any sense. Do we do that with platformers? Do we do that with Metroidvanias? Do we do that with fighting games? Do we do that with first-person shooters? Like, do you approach other games that way? And like you rigidly say, well, if the game does anything that I've experienced before, if this game does anything that another game has done, then I'm going to dismiss it or say that it's bad. There's no unique ideas anymore. Everything has been done before. Who cares, though? I'll take a game that copies the good stuff and puts their own spin on it. Well, and to be fair, saying there's no unique ideas anymore, again, I think that's just so generalizing. You honestly think, out of all the games coming out this year, Helldivers 2, Prince of Persia, and Rise of the Ronin and Stellar Blade, like some of the games that I've gotten to actually put my hands on, to sweepingly say, yeah, there are no unique ideas anymore. I don't think that that's true. Wasn't my point to say the game is bad. It's just similar to many others, but this one has a nice looking character. I'll take it. Right, but to say that, like, the way you said it, though, Jake, you made it sound like this game isn't improving on anything. Every other game that does this does it better. This game just happens to have a really attractive character. You were putting out a notion that this game's no good. It just has a really attractive character. You also are notoriously very pro Xbox and very anti PlayStation. So it's always hard when I know someone's background to read that and be like, I feel like you're just being, it sounded like you were just being a hater. Like, well, people, and that's what people are going to say. Oh, people only like that game because she's hot. And then they're going to overlook how fun the combat is, how good the combat is, how great the performance and the graphics are. You're being too cheeky. No pun intended, right, Jake? You're just being a little too cheeky about Stellar Blade. Hang on, what's Okay. I'll set it up in just a moment, Kurt. Like, I would like somebody that thinks that to tell me what game does what. Okay, so the combat in this game with the parry, the dodges, and the beta skills. What's a game that does it better? If this game isn't really doing anything new, it's not doing anything unique, then what's the game that you've played that does such a better job? I would be curious. Because I've played games like Sekiro and Tsushima that really heavily center around parrying, and this game feels unique compared to those. Now, I've not played Bayonetta. If I've played Bayonetta, would I say that? Would I be like, yeah, this is basically the exact same game? Would I say that? Like, people were doing that with Rise of the Ronin. I've played Nier. I didn't feel like Nier felt like this at all. Now, I've not played Bayonetta, but I've played Nier, and I didn't think the combat in Nier, I didn't like it that much. The combat in this hooked me. It took an hour for this game's combat to hook me. I played a pretty lengthy amount of time in Nier, and I never once felt like it felt like this. Now, maybe I was bad. Maybe I hadn't played enough games to prepare me for the style of Nier, but I don't remember walking away from Nier and being like, oh, I absolutely love that game's combat. I remember being like, yeah, the combat's fine. I played Devil May Cry, and I typically don't like games where, like, Devil May Cry didn't hook me because it was like this you're like on this linear path, and it's like combo focused. I like the combat to be a little bit more open, and I like the combat to be more action and parry focused, not combo focused. So Devil May Cry just didn't hook me. I would prefer to play a game like Ghost of Tsushima or even Stellar Blade, where the combat has more of an action emphasis alongside parries and dodges. And I felt like Devil May Cry was more focused on combos. To me, and I don't know what, and generally I don't really care if people don't agree with this. This is just how I view it. I feel like Devil May Cry has been infected with a fighting game, and that's probably why I don't like it. Does that make sense? I feel like it's been infected with like Street Fighter and Killer Instinct. And yeah, Arkham had combos, but Arkham was also free flow and dodge and parry based. So you were weaving dodges and parries into it. It didn't feel as combo focused as Devil May Cry felt. I think that might be one of the reasons why Devil May Cry didn't hook me. I don't like fighting games. I've never been a big fan of like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or Killer Instinct. And I always felt like Devil May Cry has been infected with like an arcade fighting game. And that's great if you like those kinds of games, right? It wouldn't surprise me if there's some overlap there in the fan bases where people that really like fighting games really get into the zone and they get into a good flow state with Devil May Cry. I didn't, and I just didn't like it. Nier, Bayonetta, and Devil May Cry are combo based. Usually like Devil May Cry has a style system that gives you rewards. It's not as thoughtful as Souls-likes, but when you marry the two, you have something special. Devil May Cry is very heavy combo focused. The flashier, the better. Yeah, and that just doesn't. I don't vibe with that. Like, you got to know what you like. You know what I'm saying? I've been ridiculed a lot recently. Anytime I mention a game that's not for me, I've had people like they'll try to like clip me and ridicule me for that. And it's like, I think that's a healthy version of being a gamer, just knowing what you like and what you don't like. Like, I know I don't like fighting games, so that saves me a lot of time and energy. I know I don't like racing games and sports games, so like that saves me a lot of time and energy. I know I don't like turn-based games. That saves me an awful lot of time and energy. I don't try to like squeeze something out of a game that wasn't built for me, if that makes sense. Like, when you know what you like, and you know, like, this game wasn't built for me, you don't waste time with it. It's like, I know I'm not going to like that. Now, I've expanded my horizons, and I've tried games, but usually there's a catalyst to get me there. Like, Jedi Fallen Order was the catalyst to me enjoying Souls games. For the longest time, I swore off Souls games. And I was like, yeah, that's just not my cup of tea. That's just not something that I'm going to like. And then all that changed when all of that changed when all of a sudden I played Jedi Fallen Order. It was clear to me that, like, okay, a game like this could really, really be enjoyable. It has really meaningful combat, really meaningful moment-to-moment combat. Yo, Jake with 31 months. Hope everyone had a nice Easter. Thank you, Jake. Guys, we got about 15 minutes till I'm going to transition into a show with Kirk about Borderlands 4 and what's going on with Gearbox. And we need 7 more members to hit 25. We are trying to hit a 2,300 member goal this week, which means you're going to need about 300 members. And so every 25, I get 5. So we haven't done that yet today. Now's a great time to do that. It'll pull people into, we are running a members only chat. We've been doing that for like the last, sometimes 15, sometimes 30 minutes of chat. But then you never give anything a chance outside your bubble. I don't really like turn-based, but I love Persona 5. Yeah, but you're making it sound like I have like this really narrow bubble. I loved Prince of Persia. I'm loving Helldivers 2. I'm loving Rise of the Ronin. I really liked Stellar Blade. I really liked Hi-Fi Rush. And those are all games that I finished Prince of Persia, and I would love to make time. I'm trying to finish Rise of the Ronin in 20-something hours. I'm hoping to finish Hi-Fi Rush as well. I would love to play Stellar Blade to completion when it comes out. That's not a very small bubble. That's a lot of very different games, and I only have time for so much. So I'm not going to waste my very limited time on games that I almost never have enjoyed. Yeah, I would love to go back and finish Lies of P. I would. And that's the thing, is it's like turn-based games or sports games or driving games, I have very limited time. Why would I waste my time on that? Like, well, I bet I'm going to gamble with this and maybe this game will hook me. It's like, no, dude, I got a backlog a mile long. Like, I'm going to play those games. Isn't that mostly a Sony bubble? Hi-Fi Rush, Lies of P, Prince of Persia? No, you're projecting. What are you talking about? No. The only ones I listed that were Sony were Rise of the Ronin, Stellar Blade, and Helldivers. So that's 50-50. That's 3 games that are not Sony bubble and 3 that are. And what difference does it make? That's where I'm playing. That's where I'm building a library, right? I don't like trying to set up a PC in the living room. And what's Xbox doing for the first 4 months of this year? They put Diablo on Game Pass. Okay, I already played Diablo. And got bored out of my mind. Oh, and I played and completed Kill the Justice League. That's another game that I played and completed this year. That's not a Sony game. Some of you guys have passively taken on headcanon about me, and it's because you're on the other side. And it's like, you lean Xbox. It's like, most of the games I played this year, and most of the games I'm wanting to finish, are not PlayStation based. It's like half and half. It's like right down the middle. Yo, Xerox with 21 months and a VIP. Have not done this in a while. Always been busy lately. Thank you, Xerox. Welcome back. And Stone Spire with a single gift that takes us to 19, 6 away from the 25. Thank you so much. Eugene says, isn't that a good games bubble? Fixed it for you. I just think it's good to know what you like. You know, like this idea that you think you like this weird gamer cred thing that people do. I just think it's a self-report. They're just an insecure person. Like gamer cred, you know what I mean? Trophy checking energy, that's weird energy. That's like little boy insecure energy. You know what I'm saying? That guy's not a gamer. What does that even mean? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, get in a relationship, get married, get a job, get a full-time responsibility, have a couple kids, and then let's see where your gamer cred goes. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, life stages don't always allow you to do all those things. And so when that happens, you're going to make those priority choices and you're just going to say, dude, I know what I like and I'm going to gravitate to that. I'm not going to waste time worried about what Randy's on the internet think. Why waste that mental energy of caring what an insecure child thinks about you? You know what I mean? Like if somebody came to you and told you that like little Billy at preschool thinks you're a loser, are you going to lose an ounce of sleep about that? Or are you going to be like, well, I got to have a meeting with Billy about this? No, you would dismiss it. You'd be like, that's just a child hurling an insult. Like a lot of the times I feel like that's what's happening is like people are trying to establish some kind of gamer cred. It's like, dude, just play what you like. Like, you know what I mean? Like just gravitate to the games that are giving you a good time. I still agree with you. You really should know what you like and don't before buying a game. Still, sometimes you could find something you usually don't like and find your new favorite game. Yeah, I mean, I'm always open to new horizons. Hi-Fi Rush would be an example of this. I watched my daughter play it, and I would periodically help her with it. And I was like, I don't really like rhythm games, right? I'm not really a rhythm game guy, right? Well, when you play the game from the beginning, instead of like periodically having the controller thrust into my hands and she's like, can you do this? I can't beat this. And I don't know any of the mechanics of the game, right? She's 10 hours in and I'm trying to fight a boss to help her. When I played the game from the very beginning, I was like, okay, it's a rhythm game, but doesn't really feel like a rhythm game. Like I'm not really a rhythm game guy. Like even that Hellsinger game, I just didn't dig it. I thought the music was phenomenal. I thought the graphics were phenomenal. I thought the idea of Hellsinger was awesome. And I told people they should definitely check it out. It just wasn't for me, you know? It just wasn't for me. It was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. It's almost like too much. Like I loved Doom and Hellsinger. I thought maybe I would enjoy it. So that's kind of how I viewed Hi-Fi Rush. So I'm always open to trying something. It's just there are certain games I know I'm not going to waste an ounce of my time seeing whether or not I'm going to like the latest Tekken, you know, Tekken 8. I know I'm not going to like that. I just know it. It's like I don't play fighting games. I don't have a desire. Like you have to have an innate desire to even start a game sometimes. Like if you cannot stand sports games, when the latest sports games comes out, you're not going to have this innate desire to even try it. Does that make sense? All right, guys, we got about 7 minutes. I'm going to start setting the scene up, and I'm going to get Kirk in here on the call in here in a couple minutes. We need 6 more members for the 25, and then I'll drop 5 on the chat. And then when we go over to do this stream with Kirk, it will not be set up for like members only. It'll be a public stream. PvP's not your thing anymore? Yeah, I don't really like PvP. I like burned myself out on it. Yeah, I played Call of Duty, Quake 2, Quake 3. I played Quake 2, Quake 3, Unreal Tournament, and then Call of Duty from, I would say, from about 2000 to about 2017. That was mostly what I played, was PvP games, shooters especially. 17 years of PvP, and I had just had enough. I was like, part of it is you age out, you just get old, and you're not as fast as you used to be. And another part of it is you're just kind of like, I don't like the meat grinder of it. I like a game where there's a sense of progression. I like co-op games. I like open world action RPGs. I don't know. I don't vibe with PvP games because I don't feel like anything's happening. If that makes sense. I like battle royales in short doses with the community because like you can kind of just have like a fun, crazy experience. But even that, I'm just kind of like, you know, small doses. It also doesn't help that when you've played, shooter PvP games as long as I have, you have one or two good games and skill-based matchmaking kicks you square in the nuts. Detonator with a 5-bomb takes us to 24 and puts us right on the doorstep. Who's going to secure the 25 members today? We'll see who takes the glory. Thank you so much, Detonator. Okay. Any duration. Get this for Reforge Warzone coming back. No. And Marcus. Marcus takes it. There we go. I now owe you guys 25 members. I'm going to drop that on the chat. I used to love shooters like Battlefield. Now that series is not what it used to be. Abe is Agent of Chaos and pushes us one past. Thank you so much, Abe. Let me update it here. We're gonna have to have a strong push. You guys might have to send that bat signal out there and get some of the big boys to bring the heat if we're gonna hit that 2,300 this week. It keeps doing this thing where I have to refresh the stream so that I can redirect. YouTube made some changes to the dashboard of there we go. I'm the opposite. I'm finding more fun in PvP over PvE as I'm getting older. And I'm 1 year older than you. I think that's one of the great things about, the gaming world right now is we both have a ton of options. Like neither of us are lacking for games to play. That's one of the reasons lately I've told people, like, don't try to cram PvP into a PvE game. It's not a good idea. Don't try to cram PvE into a PvP game. Like, the best PvP games, that's typically all they do. Let me get Kirk on the line here. Let me get my browser. There we go. What up?
What's going on?
Okay. All right. All right, let me gift you guys the 5 that I owe, and then we're going to shift gears here.
I definitely get the chat's aversion to PvP.
Their aversion to it or mine?
Well, I didn't catch if you said you were reverse. I just saw that the chat was like, yeah, it's a little bit. That resonates with me that it's like pretty stressful. I've never been a top tier PvP competitive shooter type player in any respect, so.
I just played too much of them over the years. It was like I just got burned out on them.
Oh, I'm loving this crop, baby.
I was there.
I'm 30.
Yeah, I fixed that. I was there at the birth of.
What's up, Sadiqua?
PvP shooters.
I don't know if you know this, but I play a lot of Hunt Showdown. It's probably like my most played game on PlayStation, and that's because like I don't know if it's just like that I really like that it's like so unique and it's like kind of goofy and I'm sort of a history buff too, so it's kind of like really cool that you're using like these old weapons from like an actual time that existed in history, and like the authenticity of like only having 3 bullets in the chamber or whatever. But also I think there's something to like the fact that like when it takes you like 5 to 8 seconds to reload a gun, like the twitchiness of the shooter like kind of it's curtailed a little bit. It becomes a little more strategic and like about positioning and stuff, so I can use my brain like at that pace of like, oh, I see the guy over there, I'm gonna take a shot at him. No, this slide shotgun mess. What was it? Fellwinter's Lie, the bane of my existence when I was
gosh, you're really going back into the record books there.
Those are my Destiny days, bro. That's when I was playing. Dude, House of Wolves was like my Destiny heyday.
I never liked the PvP in that game that much because it just wasn't why I bought it.
I loved it in 1, and then they ruined it in 2. Absolutely ruined it. 4v4 shouldn't have happened.
All right, chat, if you guys could do me a favor, there's still like 400 of you here. Smash that like button. Try to give us 50 more likes on this video. The Stellar Blade video actually did really well. I wasn't sure what we would get out of a demo kind of review after the full weekend, but that was a great turnout and a great show. We're going to transition here to talking about... You guys
better not leave.
No, they're not going to leave.
Better not leave. I
want to get this press release pulled up here.
Hey, it's a new month. What culture issue are Kirk and Ginger gonna debate on Twitter for April? I'm glad you guys are entertained by that because it just stresses me out, if I'm honest. He's a great guy. We just we don't see eye to eye on some stuff, but he keeps it professional for the most part. Yeah, Lono, I'm mad you won't let me cover any sports games because you hate them.
My audience wouldn't react to it.
Yeah,
like you can't not cover sports games for like 4 years and then like suddenly
we're kind of gonna. You can't. It's hard to talk about Take-Two and not talk about 2K. So we'll probably get the most into it that we'll ever get into it today, but.
I grounded us in Borderlands 4, though, because I think that's what people are more interested in right now.
Yeah.
Like, what's going to happen with this game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Elon, you better not. Better not. I'll call you mama. Just say no to 30 frames. Are they making fun of my camera or something else?
I don't know. I'm gonna run up real quickly. I'll be right back, and we'll jump right into the show. I know we're gonna start a little afternoon, but that's okay. That's okay. I'll be right back.
Dumb. Sports balls. Well, that's the thing. Lono doesn't want to do anything that isn't gonna go big in terms of views. So like, I'd be happy to do like little goofy features or whatever for him, like covering some stuff that he's not interested in covering, but I think he wants everything to kind of. He has a level of quality, a standard that he wants to hit with everything, which is totally respectable. Maybe we could work out some stuff like that for members, though. But unless 2K is getting the NFL license again, I don't care. That's very valid. It's very valid, Suede. Although you should check out Wildcard Football. I actually have a review for it on my channel. It's pretty good. And it basically has Ultimate Team in it, and it's not pay to win, which is really nice. You wish 2K could get the MLB license again? I don't. MLB The Show is like the best sports game on the market. And I've heard the new one has problems, so I haven't touched that one. But like 21 through 23 were amazing. I've become a gangsta over the weekend? Rich Rod, what does that mean? I'm going to need you to elaborate on that. Pat, you were over there with Jaffe? That was wild. That was a few wild streams. We're not gonna, Pat. We're not gonna do a Marvel Snap show. Like, it's not happening. He finally told me over the weekend. He was like, "Yeah, no." I was like, "Yeah, I figured that out like 4 days ago. You just didn't tell me. Oh, is it Sven? Yeah, I figured MLB The Show 24 would be just as good as the previous ones. By the way, Lono may know that he's not interested in Tekken 8, but if you are not sure if you're interested in Tekken 8, my written review just published like 20 minutes ago on Pure Dead Gaming is a website, and that's like Open Critic certified, so my name's going to be in the reviewers list on OpenCritic. But yeah, I gave it a 9.5. I like how Lono lets me not agree with him and then come back. I think it's like it goes against the narrative that he can't like take any like criticism or like differing viewpoints, because that's just fake anyway.
Okay.
Did you hear Elden Ring DLC dropping tomorrow? Okay, Marquez. Okay. We know what day it is.
Yeah, I don't even... Anything I see on Twitter, I'm like, yeah, it's probably not true.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to spam a link in chat for you guys.
Just better click it.
That's where we're headed. I'll also redirect you. Make sure when you guys get over to the new stream, you smash the like button. Those first 100 likes are really, really important, because we start with an unusual amount of viewers when we redirect, and we need to have the likes kind of line up with that. Because YouTube's like, what's going on?
Yeah, Outlet Park. Tekken 8's good. It's really good.
All right, I'm going to press the live button in just a second here. Thanks so much for checking this out here. Segment that I do on Mondays now, where Kirk from What's New Video Games sits down with me and we talk about something. And this time it's Borderlands 4 Take-Two buying Gearbox as Embracer Group is just kind of cleaning house. And we had celebration of the Gearbox purchase, and then mere hours later there were layoffs, which is, I was kind of surprised by the celebration. I was like, do y'all not know what's coming? But many people were saying, well, it's better than them shutting down. So, Kirk, glad to have you here, man. Welcome back.
We got a more nuanced conversation today. A little more. We're gonna get in the weeds, kind of like when we were talking about exclusives. You know, like it's gonna get maybe a little bit spicy because we're talking about corporations and their agendas and the stuff people really like us to get into it on. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna end the stream that we were just doing, and I'm going to bring you guys over. We were talking Stellar Blade. I'm going to redirect you guys over. So as you come over, do me a favor, man. Smash that like button. Take a second. Especially, we love you lurkers, but don't